I'll just mute it up. I'm just going to keep it open once we're ready to go. No, we were just talking about it. As you know, everyone was talking about fire, but like, not to this. Hello. Hello. Hello, hello. Yeah. Hello. Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming. As you can tell, there's still a few people waiting to get in. We want to start soon, but I also want the benefit of having everyone in from the beginning. So give us a couple of more minutes. We'll find seats, and then we'll get started at about 6:15. Thank you for being here, and I just want to make sure everyone has a chance to get in before we start. Thank you. Did you? The mayor's ready to go, but you know.
How's it going?
Good, it's going well. Yeah, we had closed session right before this, so I was like, Oh,
I was.
oh
We
my
talked
gosh.
about it, yeah.
Tax and all kinds of things. Whoopee cushions, what do you got? That's fine. That's okay. No, it's all right.
Yeah. It is. How you doing?
How are you guys doing? Yeah.
How was today?
How can I make this work better?
I don't know.
It's probably a low bar, so
Yeah.
go ahead and try.
What did you do this weekend? Did you
This is that new thing you were pushed along a month or so ago.
During the pandemic, just saying my wife and I commented 40 minutes. Turns out, a lot of work.
Yeah.
So this was the first big weeding, mowing day, which I like. I like. I was actually fine until I just moved out there. I had some fun.
Yeah, that makes it hard.
Yeah. You ever seen Airplane?
No.
Movie here? I mean, I picked a horrible week to stop it. No?
Oh, serious?
You're not a movie person?
No, I'm a huge movie person.
Airplane.
God, what's it about?
Okay, so it's a total like hilarious parody about the airline industry, and things aren't going well in the skies, and there's air traffic controllers, Floyd bridges, and
We're waiting for the state to get some hopeful.
I think they're trying to coach this plane in and lost like all control, right? And it's super stressful, and there's like 3 or 4 scenes where it zooms into him, things aren't going well, and he's like,
Why is that?
I picked a, the first one's like, I picked a bad week to stop drinking. And like, drink in the face, and then there's another one that's like, I picked a bad week to stop methamphetamine, right? And anyways, 3 days ago, I tried to stop. I decided to go cold turkey on over the pants. That's it. I've been hooked on it. Yes. So I picked a bad week to.
Yeah.
Oh, you gotta watch the movies.
I know. You know what's funny? I don't really drink caffeine that much.
Yeah.
But I imagine that like quitting any kind of substance, like
The largest overexposed. We're the most overexposed. What's
sure
fine?
you've done all the things.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
I was a big
I'll just say hi and
yeah, sure. I was a big fan of
At least that's the middle.
during the pandemic. I just like
On the fair plane,
such a stressful
it was a
time.
graphic.
And that was like such a blessing. I remember Sydney's password and I'm like, oh.
Okay.
I'm laughing. I'm like, I
I think we are mostly here. Folks are in from outside. There are some other seats over here. There's also an overflow room in the back, if you can't make it. Welcome. Thank you all for coming. We've got a great turnout because I know we all care about the same issue, which is how do we make our city as fire safe as we can, balancing it with keeping Berkeley as beautiful place to live as possible. And I think we all share the same goal, and it's just a question of how we get there and the kind of choices we make as a community about what we want to do around fire safety. And so I'm looking forward to the discussion tonight, and I welcome you all and thank you all for coming. As you know, this has been kind of a several-month process where we've had a series of community meetings, small groups, bigger groups. We had a Zoom 12 days ago. Assistant Chief Arnold and I will talk a little bit later. We're going to set up a few other kind of one-on-one smaller groups at Fire Station 7 in the coming weeks to answer more questions more directly. But it's been really important to all of us here, the fire department and the mayor and the council, to make sure that everyone has a chance to be a part of the process, because we know we can't succeed in this effort unless we're all kind of moving together as best we can. So we wanted to take the extra time. We did not want to rush the vote. We wanted to make sure that we had the benefit of everyone's input. I think you'll see tonight that there are a lot of the pieces of Ember you'll recognize. There are also some things we're doing right now to make some adjustments based on the feedback we've heard. And so I hope you'll take a look at those and give us some feedback on that, and then other things, other considerations we should take into account. So with that, I'd love to introduce the mayor to get us started. Thanks, Mayor Ishii, for being here.
Hello. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. I have the honor of giving you just a warm welcome, just saying thank you so much for being here. It's really important that we hear from all of you. I know many of you have questions, and folks are on kind of different spectrums around this. Some folks are super excited, they're ready to go, and other folks are still feeling scared or worried or concerned about how it's gonna be. So I just wanna make sure that at the end of the day that hopefully you at least get all of your questions answered and that you have a space that you can share with us, how you're feeling about things. So I also get a chance to introduce some of our illustrious speakers that are here. So I want to start with Chief Sprague. So that's over here. Thank you. Yes. Chief is a second-generation firefighter and fire chief, of course, for the city of Berkeley. And then we also have Chief Dave Winnacker, who's over on the end here. He's the Assistant Chief for the Berkeley Fire Department, and also, last but not least, Assistant Chief Colin Arnold. Yes. And he's worked for the fire department for over 10 years and is currently in charge of the Wildlife Urban Interface Division. So thank you so much for the work that you do there. I'm going to pass it back to Brent, but I also just want to say the other goal of mine that I have for this evening is also that you all feel supported in the work that's ahead, because we need to be able to work together as a city. And like Councilmember Blackaby said, we want to make sure that folks understand that we have the same goal of keeping our city safe and keeping it still really beautiful and a place that we feel proud of. So passing it back to Councilmember Blackaby.
Thanks, Mayor. If we could pull up the agenda real quick. Can I have a show of hands really quickly, because I want to make sure that we're respectful of people's time. How many folks have not heard, either at a council meeting, on a Zoom, have not heard the sort of Berkeley Fire Department Ember overview slides? Anyone who hasn't heard that? There's a few, a smattering. Okay. So what I'm going to suggest, we'll do that quickly, because I do want to get to Q&A. That's the most important part of this evening. But I also want to make sure that we level set with folks who may not have had the benefit of hearing it for the first time. So we are going to do a little bit of that at the beginning.
More specific about which version we have on that rollout? There's different versions, so you mean
Sure.
this version?
Yeah, it's the core version of Ember, and then what we'll also talk about are the pieces of feedback that we're incorporating in a new item that I authored today. A piece of legislation is coming on. Hey, we'll talk about it if you want to have a conversation about it. So we'd love to present it, and you guys can. Yes, we just shared it with the clerk. It'll be online. You guys can see it. Yeah. Okay, so let's talk very briefly about the problem, and I think one of the best ways of illustrating this, if people haven't seen, if you can advance to the next slide, is for folks who haven't seen Weathered Inside the LA Firestorm. It's a PBS piece, PBS documentary. And there's a great 1-minute clip. I think, for me, I just wanted to sort of ground us all in the same sort of view of what the problem is, because I think at least it gets us a chance of sort of moving towards what the solution might be if we can at least agree on the problem and what the situation is. So if you wouldn't mind playing this quick clip to start.
Beginning on January 7, 2025, the world learned what far too many survivors already knew. Wildfires are changing. But the LA firestorm is just the latest in a string of fires causing unprecedented destruction in the modern era. These fires are suddenly unstoppable, and there's one simple variable that explains the change: speed. Here's what we know about the lead up to the fires. After 2 unusually wet years, Los Angeles, California entered an extreme 8-month dry spell with no rain, accompanied by record-breaking heat. In these conditions, all you need is wind and an ignition to see extreme fire. And looking at urban fire disasters over the last century, we see a clear uptick in the last decade. With this surge in destructive fires, relying only on professional firefighters for protection is no longer enough.
Great, thank you. Yeah, it's not a great situation, right? Not a great situation. We advance to the next slide. So I think what we're taking out of this, look, we're facing a two-pronged crisis, right? One is a climate crisis that makes extreme weather more frequent. We all know this. Hot, dry conditions, windy conditions more prevalent, things we have to prepare for. That's what's driven the spike in activity. At the same time, we're dealing with an insurance crisis. They're related, right? Because of this climate crisis, many of our neighborhoods are less and less, if not altogether, uninsurable. And we're dealing with the fact that many of us in the hills have lost insurance or have seen huge premium spikes, right? These two things are related. That's the environment that we're operating in, right? This is the operating scenario right now that we're thinking about solutions within. So that does constrain us, it gives us a context. Last thing I'll just say is to pivot a little bit specifically to the Berkeley fire situation. In a lot of my conversations I've had with folks, I find that we don't always agree or have the same sense of what our first contact with a wildfire might be. And I think it's really instructive at least to think about it and put that on the table, because I think a lot of what Ember is proposed to do flows very naturally from that. And so again, I just want people to visualize for a second, you know, many of us live up on Grizzly Peak, up near the park, on Wildcat Canyon. We're not thinking about a scenario where our first contact with a fire is a wall of flames that sort of comes out of the park and just starts consuming block by block by block. That's unlikely, as the fire department I think would tell us. That's unlikely to be our first contact with fire. The first contact with fire is going to be an Ember storm, right? It might be a fire that's mile 2 or more into the park, but basically windblown embers are being carried into the community and are basically attacking houses, attacking blocks, falling on roofs, hitting sidings of houses, blowing down and collecting along the foundations of our homes. And the real trick of all of this work is, can we contain, or do as best as possible we can to contain an Ember storm and keep it to basically igniting spot fires and not igniting structures and creating structure to structure to structure conflagration. Because it is absolutely true, once we get to that point, structure to structure fire or conflagration like that, if the embers collect around the bases of homes, flammable material in that 5 feet around the home ignite, the house catches on fire, our density of our structures in the hills is very small. And once 1 or 2 or 3 of these structures start to ignite and the wind is sort of blowing the fire farther and farther down the hill, we're in a world of hurt. So at least I want people to think about the image here of what the objective of this proposal is, which is to try and inhibit an Ember fire from metastasizing into a structure-to-structure conflagration. We may not agree, but that is the most likely scenario that we're facing, and the solution that's been developed is built to that end. So at least I wanted to level set that. Does anyone disagree with that likely scenario? Okay, we'll take some more during the questions. Absolutely, that's what I said. It could hit the roof, fall off the roof onto the side, right? Sure, right. All of these things are important. All these things are important. Thank you, George. All these things are important. Roofs are important, siding is important, eaves are important, vent covers are important, the gap between the foundation and your siding is important. Great, thank you. But all of these things work together, and the science I think shows it. Anyway, I'll pass it over to the mayor to talk about kind of pivoting into the solution, but at least want to attempt to have a common basis for what the problem is and what we're trying to solve. So I'll hand it to the mayor.
Folks, please be respectful. Folks, I understand some folks are upset, but there are people here who also want to hear the information that we have to share. So I ask that you be respectful, and you will have time to speak later. Thank you. Excuse me, folks, please be respectful. You are welcome to share your opinion, but we are in the middle. I would like you to please sit down. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it. All right, so, why are we doing this? We talked about this a little bit already, but it's important to keep our community safe. And I'll tell you, my mom lives in Southern California, and she is older, disabled, and definitely concerned about some of the changes that are coming in terms of what she's going to be needing to do around her house. And so I understand from her, we've had a lot of conversations about her not feeling supported in doing the work. And that's why we're having these conversations, so that folks can get more information, they can understand what's gonna change, and they can feel supported by our city. We wanna make sure we're not leaving people high and dry. This is best practice. This is based on wildfire science. We've got our experts right here that are gonna share information. CAL FIRE backs what we're recommending. The home insurance industry backs it, and that's really important because folks are concerned about losing their insurance. And one of the things that I heard from folks over the past year is that they want to make sure that their insurance is going to continue to apply to their homes. Excuse me, folks, please. Please, folks. Please, you know what? You need to be respectful, please, while we're speaking. Excuse me, come on, please. We're a room full of adults here. Let's be respectful of the people who are speaking. And then when it's your turn to speak, we will also listen to you. All right, so the state passed Zone 0 in 2020, but the formal rulemaking process was delayed, so it was not implemented. The governor has mandated the rulemaking be expedited. So keep in mind that this is something that's also coming on the state level. I'm gonna pass it over to the chief.
All right. So we're going to move on to the solution that we've been talking about since late in January. I wanted, what Councilmember Blackaby said earlier, I think he was talking about the ignition of homes, and I think there's a really interesting quote that I heard the other day that Chief Winnacker passed along, which is that we may not, one way to look at this is not as a wildfire problem, because wildfire has been in our community since long before we were here and settled in the area. We don't have a wildfire problem, we have a home ignition problem. So this isn't necessarily about stopping a force that has been moving since long before we were here. It's about protecting the thing that we've put in its path. So briefly, the CAL FIRE maps, this happened to come out at around the same time that Ember did, so they traveled side by side. CAL FIRE identifies a local hazard severity based on your proximity to vegetative load. So what CAL FIRE puts out is the minimum, and we have to adopt at least the minimum, and we can't adopt any less than that. So this is the CAL FIRE very high fire hazard severity zone in red, as identified earlier this year, that we have to adopt as a minimum. So this area we're going to be required to have Zone 0 in 2029. And Berkeley has designated additionally Panoramic Hill as a very high fire hazard severity zone based on local conditions. The very high fire hazard severity zone is required to have defensible space and home hardening. Outside of the very high, once you get down into the high, defensible space is not required by state code, but home hardening is. That would be Chapter 7A. Chapter 7A in the building code refers to construction materials and methods for homes built inside a wildland urban interface. Thanks, next slide. So what the science says about within 5 feet of structures. So in the very high fire hazard severity zone, what is recommended for defensible space based on the evidence that we have is that plants can be in non-combustible containers no larger than 5 gallons, adequately spaced, and no higher than 18 inches in height. Mature trees taller than the roof line, adequately pruned to minimize risk, are absolutely fine, regardless of where they are on the property. They can be within the first 5 feet. They can be anywhere else on the property. What is not allowed within the first 5 feet of structures in the Ember legislation is no in-ground vegetation, climbing vines, or combustible mulch. No new wooden or combustible fences. So we recommend removing existing fences when they're parallel to the structure if they're combustible, and we'll show you a video why. But under the Ember legislation, the only part that needs to be replaced are existing fences that are directly attached to the structure in those first 5 feet. The other two things not allowed are wood or combustible items unless they're easily moved on high fire danger days. Think about wooden or plastic lawn furniture. And no tree limbs extending into the zone. They either need to be removed or they need to be thinned if it's otherwise going to jeopardize the health of the tree. Next slide, please. So there's a lot of misinformation that's been passed around, and I think it's really important to clarify what is not required under this law. There are no mandatory structural changes to homes. You don't have to remove or alter your deck. You don't have to remove trees currently or that will be taller than the structure. You don't have to remove or alter fences that are not within the first 5 feet. And you definitely don't have to remove trees that are more than 5 feet from the structure. So there's a lot going on this slide. I want to briefly talk about what you're looking at here. So there's a lot of ways that fire can arrive at our doorstep. And those pathways are identified in those sort of red arteries or veins that you see coming from the east. Fires and embers will find the weakest link. I haven't found a great analogy for this yet. I tried a few with my family and they didn't like them. So I'm not going to go with the analogy. But when we look at ember storms, it is hundreds of thousands of firebrands being blown through the air and hitting the side of a structure. And so if we do some of the work, if we put on vents, if we do some home hardening, if we get rid of some vegetation, in the presence of hundreds of thousands of embers, that does not reduce our risk in a noticeable way, because those hundreds of thousands of embers will just happen to land where we still have hazards. So the simplest stuff, the easiest stuff to do is often the most important, because embers will take advantage of that. The other thing, sorry, if you mind going back. This is Laura's way of telling me I've talked too much. So if you go back, one other thing I want to point out on this slide is these magenta circles that you see up along our eastern border. So these are conflagration blocks. This is where these fire pathways have a reasonable path into the community. And when they enter the community, they are in parts of the community where the structure separation density is so small, where homes are so close together, that one home igniting generates enough radiant heat to ignite the home next to it. And I think that's a really important thing to talk about for just a moment, because when we look at the hills, a lot of times we look at the hills and we look at vegetation, the highest fuel load that we have in the hills is in the form of homes. So when we talk about a home ignition problem, what we're saying is that once one home ignites, if you have a structure separation density of less than 25 or 50 feet, without fire department intervention, the home adjacent to it will ignite and the home adjacent to that will ignite. So if that home in the middle did all of the work, the home hardening, the defensible space, did the double pane windows, did the Class A roof, that's great. But none of those things are enough to stop the radiant heat from an adjacent home igniting it. And that's why it's so important that we work together. Chief? Thanks, Lloyd.
This is a video that I think really illustrates the problem. This is a grass fire in Texas, Balch Springs, small fire department. There was a period of drought that preceded this fire. Weather conditions were hot, and there was winds of about 10 to 15 miles an hour on this fire. The fire was started next to a roadway by a spark from a piece of lawn equipment. That's low grass, well-maintained grass. You can see the fire spread through the grass until it contacted the community. What's interesting about this fire is that there's not enough fire department resources, which is what happens in these large structure-to-structure conflagrations. So you can see the fire runs along the grass, ignites some bushes, ignites the fences, and the fences act as wicks to carry fire through the community. We're going to pan to a structure here and see that that outbuilding is now going to be ignited from the fence fire from radiant and direct heat. You can see the fire also creeping along the grass to the back patio of that house. We see the outbuilding here is now on fire from the fence, and now that structure is producing radiant heat, convective heat that's now going to ignite the main structure. So The timer is the time from ignition. That's correct. Yeah, there's a helicopter that's filming this from the beginning of the fire. So you can see now the outbuilding is completely ignited, and now the corner of the rear of that structure is ignited, and now that fire is going to travel into the main home. So this is what I think oftentimes we can't see, and oftentimes is not captured by video, but is what we've seen hundreds and hundreds of times as we go on these campaign fires, is the pathways that are created unintentionally by the way that we position structures on our property, fences, vegetation. Fire finds the weakest link and travels from those points from structure to structure. And again, once a structure is ignited, then we have that radiant heat, and it's kind of like a domino effect that begins to occur. And that's when it's really out of our control as long as the wind is on that fire. As we saw in LA, one of the biggest well-staffed fire departments in the nation, you can throw an incredible amount of resources at these fires and you're not able to stop it. So this is what we're trying to interrupt, are these pathways, these wicks that are created throughout our neighborhoods. Next slide, please. So this is 2 slides, and I want to illustrate the difference between an unmitigated community and a mitigated community. So really we're trying to impact time here. In an unmitigated community where we don't have zone 0, where we don't have home hardening, and we haven't taken a look at how fire travels through these neighborhoods and interrupted it, we're going to have a number of structures that are going to ignite, especially on the border of our community. The number of structures are going to outpace the number of firefighting resources that we have, even with mutual aid resources coming in. This happens really quickly. And once that happens, we get that domino chain effect of fires, structure fires, and it transitions from a vegetation, wildland fire to a structure-to-structure conflagration. Completely different than a wildfire, right? Normally, today, if there's a structure fire, we send 4 engines, 2 ladder trucks, a chief, and an ambulance for 1 structure fire. In these wildland scenarios, you're lucky if you get 1 engine per house. So the houses that get saved by us are triaged based on what they've done to prepare themselves, in essence, to be passive firefighting resources themselves. So we rely on the work that we do years ahead of these fires for us to be effective in the hills. And I can tell you right now, if we have a wind-driven fire that comes out of the park or starts in the hills, we're not going to be able to get ahead of it most likely. If we have conditions that are windy, drought preceded, and high heat, low humidity. So this is an unmitigated community. This is where we are today. Next slide. This is where we want to be. Mitigated community. We've done the work over a long period of time. It essentially buys us time. It buys you time. It buys you time to evacuate, and it buys us time to get enough firefighting resources into the neighborhood so we can overwhelm the number of fires that are there and suppress the fires that do occur. This is the best chance we have of slowing down. We're probably not going to stop one of these fires, but this is the best chance of slowing the fire down, minimizing the risk, minimizing the number of structures that are damaged or destroyed. Next slide. We can still have beautiful gardens with Zone 0. This is a picture of a largely compliant home existing. They haven't done work recently. This is a home that has Zone 0 in effect, and they have the 5 feet of non-combustible area adjacent to their home. Next slide. I think if we think about, we oftentimes have seating areas, communal areas, social areas that are out farther into our garden. If we can think about relocating those adjacent to the home to create that Zone 0, that's an easy way for us oftentimes to make this change. Next slide. We can still live in the forest. This is a home in Berkeley on Cragmont, I believe. There's a number of homes. Trees, mature trees that are higher than the roof line, limbed up appropriately with the ground maintained, is totally okay. This is not a danger to this home. When we talk about replacing fences, while that's not required, except for the 5 feet that connect to a home, there are a variety of non-combustible fences, metal, masonry, or something like this. Some of you find it ugly, some people find it attractive. It's in the eye of the beholder, right? Excuse me. Next slide. This is a video from Paradise.
Her home survived the campfire, but her entire landscape was wiped out. During the years of COVID, she quietly got to work. What you're seeing now is 5 years of patience, grit, and growth, while still keeping defensible space to keep her home safe. And now she has a garden that is thriving. Let her story remind you that with love, intention, and a little dirt under your nails, anything can come back to life.
So we can still have beautiful gardens that are fire safe, that include Zone 0. I think we're just too early in the process for us to visualize it, and we have to change the way that we think about landscape design and how we lay out our gardens and our social spaces. This is possible. Other communities have done it, and we can do this together. And we're going to provide resources to help everybody through this. Next slide. Back to Brent.
Thanks, Chief. Last thing we'll do, and then we want to turn it over to you. So if we can get through this bit, we want to turn it over to you and hear more of your questions and answers. We have spent a lot of time talking to you, hearing from you. Propaganda from the fire department. If this is propaganda, I mean, then we're all in a world of hurt if it's propaganda from the fire department. Let us finish, and then we'll have Q&A. Okay? That's my deal. So we are incorporating community feedback, and we want to talk about that. So can we hit to the next slide, please? There are 3 things that we're doing. We just introduced this legislation today. It'll hit the website. I will send a link around as soon as it's published so you can see it. Those 3 things. One is, this will run alongside, so Ember will be on the agenda on the 17th. These items will also be on the agenda on the 17th. First thing is to ask VFD to come back, codify all of the things we've talked about: timeline, costs, rollout plan, education, support. Put that into a rollout implementation plan, and also the timeline, right? We are not fining people in 60 days, $500 a day. Not gonna happen, right? Anyway, codify that, define it. We have agreed upon plan that we all agree and see. That's coming back. We're asking the fire department to do that. Step 2, this is something that was the fire department's idea, is to create a working group of residents, stakeholders, working with the fire department to review. There's a lot of very technical material in the fire code. Some of you have read it. We've heard about it. To review the vegetation management of that code and to make adjustments so that it meets Berkeley's needs. There's some very specifics about 2 feet here, 5 feet here, 6 inches, right? I mean, very, very detailed components that we want to make sure work for Berkeley. And we want to have a working group that can work with the fire department to bang this out. We already have an existing fire code update. The fire department's required to come back every 3 years. They're going to come back again at the end of the year, all ready to make these fire code updates. We will make this change, these vegetation management changes, as part of that process. And the third, and you'll see them in a second because we'll go through each of these. And the third is there's some additional changes that we've already identified around trees and around other components of exemptions, modifications, the things that make it work for your particular property. We're also going to make those changes in the code and have that roll in as well in this update to the fire code. Again, nothing in Ember goes into effect until January. We're trying to get the ball rolling so we can start the process, start the education, but all of these things we can continue to make progress on. We can continue to adapt and take the feedback. But again, we're just trying to keep the process moving so that we can all be on the path to safety. I'm going to hand it over to my colleagues to talk a little bit more, starting with Councilmember O'Keefe, to talk about the rollout plan.
Thank you, Councilmember, future Congressman Blackaby. Hi, everyone. I'm Councilmember Shoshana O'Keefe. I'm the councilperson for this district that we're in right now. Isn't it lovely? I am here to talk to you about 2 things that many people have expressed concern about. So I have some good information that I'd like to share with you. One is about our rollout timeline. I want to be really clear about what we're looking at. Assuming this goes forward, starting in July of this year, the fire department is going to begin neighborhood site visits and begin hosting homeowner inspection workshops, as well as start providing training for landscapers and contractors. So they really want to start strong supporting you, those of you who are affected. Inspections will not begin until May 2026. That's the beginning of inspections. So we have 1 year until anything like that would ever happen. And if the inspection comes and you're running behind, but you are working on it, you will not be cited. I don't think anyone in the fire department wants to cite you. They want to help you get it done. And you can expect regular and ongoing communications from the city and fire department via mail, email, online video, and in-person visits. So I think the overall punchline of this is we want to support you in getting this done. We do not want to punish you. This is all of us in this together. Okay? The other thing, financing, good. The other thing I want to talk about is how are we going to pay for this? Yes, this will be expensive. Absolutely. We know that. So the fire department has already secured $1 million in grant funding. I know it's just a start, but they've already secured that to help anyone who needs it. Namely, the people who will be eligible are homeowners over 65 and low-income residents making below median. So that's who that money will be set aside for. Completion of Zone 0 will also make you eligible for a transfer tax credit of up to 0.5% of your home, when and if you sell it. And there's more to come. Like I said, this is just a start. The fire department and the city are continuing efforts to secure additional sources of financing, ranging from additional grants to tax credits to low-interest loans. So we really want to do everything we can to help you make this happen, because this is important that we are all able to do this. And now I'm going to hand it to, it says Mayor on my thing. And now I'm going to hand it over to Mayor Ishii. Thank you.
Sorry, I know we're passing the mic quite a lot here. So just one thing I wanted to make sure that I shared, I mentioned earlier that I wanted folks to feel supported. One of the things that our office has been talking about is actually helping to facilitate a neighborhood organizing basically around this. There are already some really amazing organizations that are doing work in our community, the Berkeley Fire Safe Council, Berkeley just like gardening groups that are actually really interested in getting involved. And you can give a wave, all these folks in the front who are really involved in clearing eucalyptus trees already. They've been organizing students from UC Berkeley to come out and to help to do this work. And so our office is really very motivated to make sure that anyone who needs support, and this doesn't just include folks that are low income or seniors, but just anyone who kind of needs that support can have that support. They can let us know that they need it, and that we can actually have people who are interested in volunteering and getting involved to help support this effort as well. I've had a lot of people tell me that they want to help, and that's really exciting. I think that that says a lot about our city, that we want to be able to support our neighbors in doing this kind of work. We're going to continue, excuse me, I'm still speaking. You can ask your question when it's your time to speak. We're going to continue the CHIPPR program. Excuse me. Thank you. Appreciate you in the front. We're going to continue the CHIPPR program and provide other tools needed for community work days, help neighborhoods coordinate to organize vegetation management work collectively rather than individually for better contractor pricing. And what I was talking about, the community effort that I was talking about, is we're calling it Berkeley Core. So not just this project, but there will be other projects throughout the city that I know folks will need support on, and this is just one of them. So I'm very excited to be able to help with that. And then in terms of the rollout plan, we talked about this already a little bit, but regular report backs to council. Berkeley Fire Department and the city manager will inform council if the state of California changes their Zone 0 requirements so that we can revisit our standards, making sure that we're nimble and paying attention to any changes that are made. And then also Berkeley Fire Department and the city manager will provide semi-annual updates to council on wildfire mitigation efforts by our regional partners, which include East Bay Regional Parks District, there's all these word salads here, PG&E, EBMUD, UC Berkeley, Berkeley Lab, and neighboring jurisdictions. And this is really important because we've heard from a lot of folks that they feel like, what are all our partners doing? What are the other jurisdictions doing? And just know that there are many different organizations that are very focused on this. We've been having a lot of conversations with them already. All right, passing it back to Brent.
Thank you. Let me
me try not to trip here. I'm Mark Humbert. I'm a council member for District 8, which is southeast Berkeley. And I included in my district is the one area of Berkeley that actually burned in 1991, the area kind of up Alvarado. Also included is Panoramic Hill, which is, and many of you know, is landlocked and also probably equally subject to high fire danger as the area between Grizzly Peak and Wildcat Canyon Road in Tilden. What I'm going to be talking about are, and Councilmember Blackaby alluded to this, the fire changes, fire code changes that are proposed that we'll be working on, that groups will be working on into the fall. There will be clarifying language and examples to existing modification language. Right now, if there are requirements under the fire code for fire mitigations, there's an opportunity to show that you have special conditions and that those should not be directly applied to you. There should be modifications. So we're going to be working on that language to apply it in this context. We'll be clarifying how residents identify appropriate exceptions and allow for consideration of alternative materials and methods. So we're going to try to make it as flexible as possible. There will be direct appeals to City Council, which is pretty unusual, from a decision of the fire marshal of the fire department in a particular case. If the homeowner is not willing to accept those, the homeowner can appeal directly to City Council. I'm hoping we will not be real busy on those things, but we may be. There is sort of archaic legacy language in the fire code about misdemeanors. We're going to strip that out. It's not appropriate to criminalize this, and we all agree. Now, good. I thought you'd like to hear that. With respect to trees, and I think the fire chief talked about this, and maybe even Councilmember Blackaby, trees that are in the 5-foot zone don't need to be removed so long as they're mature trees where the limbs are trimmed back 10 feet above the roof line. And in cases outside the 5-foot zone, zone 0, where there's there are issues about continuous tree canopy, and that would provide the ability of fire to travel from one tree to the next. We don't want to cut down mature trees, so an alternative solution will be to clear underbrush to prevent the fires from climbing up into the canopy. So that's pretty much what I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark. So the takeaway here is, look, we're trying to sort of make adaptations where we can that's consistent with what the fire department believes is best practice, what the insurance industry, what the state believes is best practice, but also make it work for Berkeley. These are the things we're trying to do. As we have a discussion tonight, we're going to have these whiteboards. If there are other things, other ideas, other considerations, we're happy to take those down. This is a process where we can continue to refine those things. Last thing, and then we want to open up for Q&A. It might be the will of this community that we wait. There's certainly, I'm just saying, there's certainly a lot of people here. However, there's a few people with orange signs that think so. I think most of us up here, myself included, I've been spending a lot of time with this and with the fire department. I don't think we should wait. Here's why. Here's the argument. Because we just made some other adaptations and we're happy to take more. Sir, you'll have your moment. Sir, you'll have your moment. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So here's the last thing, and we'll open for Q&A. The decision is we're moving forward with the conversation.
Folks, please.
Go ahead. Thanks, Mary.
Okay.
Okay, let me make the point, and then we're going to open for Q&A, because there's clearly a lot of interest in talking, and I want to hear from you guys. So, one, why does this group believe we shouldn't wait? One, this plan is already consistent with what California's Zone 0 regulations are. We've seen the proposed regulations. They're going through the rulemaking process right now. This is consistent with that. If we don't act, the state's going to compel us to act anyway, right? We will have to do this one way or the other. I think we should move sooner. Other folks may disagree. That's a debate worth having. Here's why. Those regulations, we've seen the draft regulations. They've been proposed. They're going through the rulemaking process. They'll be finalized in the next 3 to 6 months. Should those regulations change? Should they decide radically out of nowhere, even though for many years it's all been in this direction? If the state decides, actually, wait, you know what? Let's change what we're thinking on Zone 0, we can still update our regulations. We have that process. We're a city council that can adopt and make edits to the ordinance. But there are no indications from everything that we've seen that the state is not moving in any direction other than what we're proposing for you tonight, okay? Last thing is then, again, our inspections don't begin until May 2026. We have a full year. The state's regulations will be finalized in the coming months. These things are all coming together at the same time. I think we should start. That's point number one. Point number two, we've had a number of conversations with state leadership, legislative leadership, the California Coastal Conservancy, and others. The state is in the process of awarding $1 billion in wildfire mitigation grants all across the state. I want Berkeley to get our fair share of that money. To do that, we need to move. I'd rather be an earlier adopter that has access to this sort of funding and has a chance than being a laggard and then we're competing against 500 or 1,000 different communities. We have a chance to be out front doing what we know the state is already going to ask us to do anyway and get more financial support because of it. So at least I want folks to consider that. And the third thing I will say, and then you will have a chance, the clock is ticking. This transition, no matter when we start, will take time. We could start now, we could start in 6 months, we could start in 12 months. This transition will take time. And I'd rather we start sooner to have us a fighting chance at building the kind of safe community that we want and maybe preventing some other of our neighbors from losing their insurance because we're doing the right thing and meeting the standard. That's my argument. You may disagree with it, but that's my argument because a lot of people say, why should we get ahead of the state? This is why I think we should get ahead of the state. Okay, that's it, I'm done. Now, time for Q&A. We've done a lot of talking. We want to hear from you. Lori, what are we doing with the microphones? Go ahead. Lori will give us a setup for this. Thank you.
If people can come up to the mic, make a line at the mics on either side, and we'll ask one person on one side and then the next on the other. If there's anybody who, for mobility reasons, cannot stand up, raise your hand, and we'll have a volunteer stand in line for you. Okay, and every person has 1 minute to ask your question, and then the presenters will answer it.
Folks, I'm sorry, could you please just keep it down so we can make sure we hear the instructions?
It's a Q&A. You are welcome to make a comment if you'd rather do that. But if you would like an answer, make it a question, okay? And then once you ask your question, please sit down. Thank you.
And can we have the folks who are staff just raise their hands so you know who's staff in the room? So my staff is here, Councilmember Blackaby's staff is here, Councilmember O'Keefe, and I think somewhere also Councilmember Humbert's staff is here as well. So just if you do want to be in line and you can't stand and wait, please just raise your hand. Thank you. Thanks, Lori.
Oh, go over here. Sure. Yeah. Thank you. Or unless you want. Okay. Why don't we start over here? Thank you.
Hi. Thank you. Hi. My name is Rachel Bradley. And I have what is both a comment and a question. They're kind of intertwined. Okay, so we all agree that fire preparation is very important, but the emphasis on creating a 5-foot empty zone around our houses seems a little oversimplified to me. Embers will be flying everywhere and starting more fires, you know, in dead weeds, in litter under eucalyptus trees, in mulch, all over the place. So our houses are not built on empty lots like some of the ones that you see in the videos where they're doing, you know, test fires. So I just would really urge that, and as the chief said, when a wind-driven fire starts, it's very hard to control. So I would really urge more emphasis, continuing emphasis, and I know you'll do this, but I'm asking for it, on vegetation management all over the hills, not just within the 5 feet. But the real thing that I want to emphasize is that I think it's really important to clear our roadways so the fire trucks can get in and residents can get out. Because we've seen the results, we've seen the videos, we've heard the stories. So I think it's time to start restricting parking now on our narrow streets where necessary for that purpose. And this seems to me should be a relatively simple thing to figure out the logistics on.
That's time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So my question is, when is this process going to start? When are we going to see some results on this? Yes.
So the question was, when are we going to roll out some information on parking restrictions? We have a draft of the we're 2 years into the evacuation and response time study, which is looking at exactly that issue, or that's one of the issues that impacts evacuation time. And we're looking to have a final draft back from the consulting team in a couple weeks. And that is going to have specific recommendations on parking and whether it's weather-related, weather-triggered parking, permanent parking restrictions, and how that impacts evacuation times. So that's coming very soon.
Well, it sounds to me like there's support here. So
Yeah.
Thank
I like,
you.
and I'll say we already passed an item where we are red striping more curbs. We're asking Public Works and Fire and Police to work on more of the red curbs, and then on red flag days to do more enforcement, do more towing. So that's
do that.
the minimum. I think we could go farther than that. And Congressmember O'Keefe, Councilmember
The clock
O'Keefe.
is ticking.
I hear you.
Okay.
I hear you. Thank you for that.
Thanks for the shout out.
Over here, sorry. I'll alternate.
Okay, am I starting? All right. All right, thank you very much, and hello to everyone. Glad to see so many people here tonight. I have two questions, and I'll just preface them with some context. So my first question is around the fact that this is clearly an argument can be made is a taking under the Fifth Amendment, a regulatory taking, and that's in violation of California state law. There's also concerns about the Civil Rights Act being violated, as there's nothing to address the fact that this is, if you look at the room, the SKUs is one of the oldest population areas in the entire city, and it seems like elderly people are being targeted. The way that the elderly gentleman in the back was being spoken to earlier troubles me deeply, and I think shows the disrespect that this mayor's office and council has shown to elderly citizens. I'm sorry, that had to be said because people were screaming at him, and he's 80 years old. And so between that and the fact that Department of Justice complaints have been made, FOIAs have been sent, legal actions are being planned, why is it that there's no city attorney's office member here speaking to us and talking about those issues
That's your time.
tonight?
Your time's up.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, your time.
Our city attorney isn't here, so I don't think we should be addressing the legal questions, but I will say that I think it's completely fine to tell someone to not yell at me, so I feel like that's appropriate. Go ahead. Go ahead.
We starting?
On the side, yeah.
I want all my seconds.
Yeah, go ahead.
First, I have a question, and I won't pause for the answer. If you could write it, please. The vote that's going to be held on June 17th, you've made changes to this legislation since those first two votes happened. For example, taking out the $500 fine. Don't you have to write it again so that you're voting on what the final thing is? So start the clock over again and have 3 different votes. That's my first question. Thank you. Prioritize everything, everywhere, all at once. My camellia is less of a threat to my neighborhood than the giant field of dry weeds right next door. Pick the easy things, start with the easy things, and then get us all to take out our camellias. Don't pass legislation before you have the details worked out, an implementation plan. Promises of there's going to be funding, la, la, la. And lastly, implementation plan again.
Thanks. Your time is up. Thank you.
Did it.
4 things in a minute. It's pretty good. I'll say, look, on the process, we basically have 3 items. We have the maps, we have the fire code changes, and we have this series of referrals back that we're going to update the fire code language during the triennial process. So there are 3 different pieces that we're passing. It's the second reading of Ember and the second reading of the maps on the 17th. It'll be the first reading of this referral item. We'll only take it to pass it once to go back to staff and ask for those pieces to be done. I don't remember all the other elements. There were some other questions.
I just wanted to comment on the fact that when we make a change to something, that we keep moving forward in the process. And I want to say, like, someone in the audience keeps saying, it's already been decided, but actually, I think Councilmember Blackaby has shown that as we've been listening to folks, we've been taking in feedback and making adjustments so that, you know, we are making changes. So I don't want folks to think that this is just like it's done. But the implementation piece in terms of getting support, there are already programs in place to help support. So it's not that that doesn't exist. It's just we're looking for even more ways to support folks. Okay.
And Colin, sorry.
Yeah, and just to one other comment, that the $500 citation was never in the legislation. That's information that got passed around through somebody else that was never referenced. So that was never in the work. It's not what we submitted to council. I'm not sure what you have.
Folks, you can share that with us later. Thank you. All right.
Thank you.
I'm going to let this person speak over here. Go
Hi,
ahead.
my name is Dr. Leslie Fuchs. I'm a public health officer, and I was in Southern California taking care of fire refugees when I was learning about what was going on here in Berkeley. And so I'm a big proponent of fire safety and weed abatement and all of those things, and helped organize the last set of abatement biomass reductions that happened in John Hinkle Park. And so my question really is around the short game. I understand, like, the big project here. It makes perfect sense to me, although clearly the details need to get worked out with the various powers that be in the city. But red striping the restricted parking areas in the hills that you could barely get through a big car or an Amazon truck as they're going in the hills now. Just emergency vehicles, as a physician and clinician, I find it sort of stunning that that has not yet happened, and I don't understand why not. Similarly, there are things that can be done now. Let me finish.
I'm sorry, your time is up, and actually, I want to make sure.
My time is not up.
So you have a minute, and we're doing that so that we can hear from more folks.
There are weeds on the Arlington.
Thank you.
Okay,
folks, please.
It's just
all right.
If you do, then sit down.
The short game matters because you can plan for the future, but the future is now in Berkeley. The future is now. It's 30 years since the Oakland fire. I've lived here that long, and it just doesn't make sense to me that the small things don't happen. They're not happening.
Okay, thank
Make
you.
those things happen.
I agree with you on street parking, and we're working on that. I agree with you.
So I can talk briefly about the red curbing. That was a project that was started pre-pandemic, 2 chiefs ago. It was looking at specifically not evacuation, large fires, but day-to-day emergency response, where those pinch points are, and focusing on getting us to your homes quickly. That started to roll out, and there was tremendous community opposition on every block that it was proposed, except for one, which actually implemented it. Then the pandemic happened. When we came out of the pandemic response, I said, you know what, before we launch back into this, I would like to have a data-driven approach. We have plenty of anecdotal information of not being able to get through in certain places, but let's find out from an evacuation perspective what will actually happen if we launch forward with this red curbing initiative. So that's what we've been doing for the last 2 years, and very soon we'll have that information, so I'll be much more comfortable making recommendations to the community and to the council on how to move forward with that project.
Thank you, Chief. All right, we're going to go over here.
I'd like to know if you believe that this is what a representative democracy looks like. I don't see anybody on this stage who represents waiting until the state does something. I don't see anybody on this stage talking about research that talks about what the zone 0 should be. I see you're making concessions and you're acting like they came out of thin air. No, you had a meeting on April 24th at which you had a public meeting, your first public hearing on this issue, and you voted unanimously for it, City Council, without hearing from your constituents, okay? We were given 1 minute then. Like I'm being given 1 minute now. okay? And we're being tarred and feathered as if we don't give a damn about fire safety, and that's not the issue. But now you're tweaking it. And the map shouldn't be voted on June 17th because it goes all the way down to Shattuck Avenue, which you haven't addressed.
Thank you. Your time is up. Thank you.
You failed us.
So, in terms of us saying that we got that information from thin air, I think we've made it pretty clear that we're getting that information from feedback from folks, and we have heard lots from folks before we made those votes. So, just so you know, it's not that we're not hearing from people. We've gotten hundreds of emails. We've spoken to a lot of individuals. So we are hearing from people. And in terms of a representative democracy, we are all elected, all 4 of us here. So, and we're not elected on, excuse me, folks, excuse me, I'm speaking. We are all elected here, and we're not elected on a specific issue. So you're not going to get a council that, you know, has differing opinions exactly across all of the different issues. That's just not possible. So thank you for your question, but I just had to respond to that. Go ahead.
Well, I'm finding, I don't know if this is on or not, I'm finding this very painful tonight, actually. Some families are dealing with big stuff right in their household, you know, existential, life and death. I'm thinking if we have an earthquake, or if we have terrorism, or if we have a fire, God forbid, we gotta be together. And so it's sounding us versus them, and I'm a little sensitized from the Trump administration and Doge coming through, right? Real simple, Doge keeps it real simple. So I think that I've got only 2 simple questions to be answered tonight, and we attended the last Zoom too. But I think part of the resistance is that it was sort of simplified for good reasons. And so my 2 questions are, why can't we mandate vent meshes where the embers are coming around? Why can that not be mandated? And secondly, what's the exception for exotic plants and rare plants that are down in that drop zone?
Thank you. Thanks so much. And I appreciate your comment about unifying us. I think it is very important that we remain unified as a city.
So to the first question regarding vent mesh, so there are really 2 distinct components we're looking at here. One is home hardening, which is changes to the structure that's regulated by the building code. Under state law, the building code can only be applied at the time that there is a permit requiring event, like a major remodel, new construction, an addition, something like that. But a home that is not undergoing a permit required event is considered existing non-conforming, and it is compliant with the code that was in effect at the time the house was constructed. Because it's a state law, and that's not something that we have. It's also, I would argue, I would love it. Believe me, I'm a firefighter. I would love to see vent mesh everywhere. There's a lot of reasons why having homes compliant with the code that was in effect at the time they were built makes a lot of sense the rest of the time. So I think this is just one of those things that we have to accept. There's nothing to prevent people from voluntarily retrofitting the mesh. It's low cost, very high impact, and there's nothing to prevent the city, as it is now, incentivizing that by providing vent mesh at no cost to residents. I would encourage everybody, irregardless of your position about everything else we talk about tonight, replacing your vents is a victimless crime. Just swap out the vents, reduce that primary point of entry that will be problematic. To the second question about exotic, rare, endangered, special status species, sedimentation of surface water, or soil instability, all of those are regulated by CEQA, Fish and Wildlife, water course quality issues, so forth. The code has and always will have to be compliant with CEQA. And there are, under existing requirements in the California Fire Code, specifically CFC Section 104.9, there's a modifications process where if there are practical difficulties with applying the code, the applicant can propose an alternate to achieve the same practical effect. And what that is an opportunity for the unique conditions on each one of your parcels. And to be clear, every parcel in the Berkeley Hills is unique, and there is not a single parcel that looks like the IBHS test. So conceded, but could not agree more. But when there are conditions that make a practical implementation, or a literal interpretation in practical, there is a mechanism for a resident to say, there is a reason I can't do that because it will cause the take of rare, special status, endangered species, soil instability or sedimentation of surface waters. And then the fire department reviews that, and there's a back and forth, and then a site-specific modification can be approved to match the specific conditions on your ground. The other thing that's allowed for is called alternate means and measures request, or an AMMR, which is where you as the resident have found something, a material, an approach, a building construction method that achieves the same practical effect but isn't recognized in the current code. Happens all the time. I have approved, as a fire code official, a living roof with grass and things on it. Not Zone 0 compliant, but it was manufactured in such a manner that they were able to achieve the same practical effects as a Class A rated roof, even though that living roof wasn't recognized in the code, because the code never envisioned it. And the code is intended to be a baseline that can cover all circumstances, and part of the way it does that is it applies essentially a pressure relief valve for special circumstances that the code couldn't envision. So to answer your question, if you have a particular plant that falls into those categories, you submit a modification, and then alternate means and measures, such as creating 5 feet of clearance around the plant, or whatever else the case may be. There's essentially a limitless number of opportunities as long as they have the same practical effect and are recorded in writing in the files of the fire department per the existing base code.
Thank you. We're going to go to this mic over here. And I know you like to see your time, so I'm going to show you.
Thank you, Chief. Great explanation. So get your lawyer and fill out a boatload of paperwork if you want to fall into that. San Rafael grants $2,500 for home hardening, gutter guards, and vents. Berkeley, $250. So my question is for Assistant Chief Arnold and Chief Sprague, how many wind-driven Ember fires have you participated in? We want 9,000 homes to be very high risk, all the way to Shattuck. Nobody said that today. 9,000. The state says it's only 900 from Grizzly Peak to Tilden. They are trying to phase in 9,000 as very high risk.
Your time is up. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm not sure where the $250 number came from. We actually provide the vent screen for free. And we're looking at expanding that program. So that's 1 point. 2 is the current very high fire danger severity zone, which was established in the early 90s, comes all the way down to where we are today. We are proposing a substantial contraction of the zone to what the state has identified, which is the minimum that we have to adopt, and we're including, because of local conditions, Panoramic Hill. So it's a substantial contraction. There is the high fire hazard zone, which we have brought down to MLK, the current border, actually just shy of the current border of the very high. And in that zone, the only thing that's required for new construction or substantial remodels is adherence to Chapter 7A of the Building Code. We included in the council report a conceptual phasing plan of bringing this the Zone 0 down the hill. But we said very clearly in all presentations that that would require more analysis. We would come back through a public process, through council, before we ever did that. We've got our work cut out for us in the areas we've proposed and the rest of the very high zone identified by the state, which we have to do before we move on anywhere else. Thank you.
Thanks, Chief. Real quick, and then we're gonna take a couple questions and pause for a moment, and then keep taking questions. We've got a few neighbors who are here who also wanted to share some of the work they're doing. I just wanted people to hear that. So let's do 2 questions, hear from some neighbors, and then I'm gonna be here as long as we need to be. So I just want to take a pause after these.
Okay.
Hey, excuse. We're gonna take. We're gonna take plenty of questions. We're taking plenty of questions. Okay. I also want you to hear from some other neighbors that aren't us. Well, you can leave if you don't want to stay, but that's how we're going to run this. So 2 questions, and then we'll hear from neighbors, and we'll do questions the rest of the night.
Okay.
Mayor, nice to see you. I have to
Yes.
say, democracy
Oh,
is messy.
thought it was my turn
Your
first.
level of anger, as a response to anger from constituents, it's unacceptable. Now, having said that, way beyond my minute here, we have asked the Alliance for Practical Fire Solutions to meet with each one of you. We are comprised of 500 to 600 people. Regardless of your statements to the country, of how much public input you got, how many community outreach you had, this should be an example of that failure. We have no animus against the the fire department. They are staff, we respect them. The animus are against you for moving forward on almost a vote on something that now you're changing because we're obligating you to. Question. Number 1, if you're going to do all these changes and all these regulations that are different, put them in writing, put it on the proposal so that people can see it. That's transparency, that's sunshine government, that's true governance, for people can see it, and then
Thank
people
you.
can ask you to vote.
Your time is up.
Do that,
Thank you.
and we will respect you.
Thank you. Do you want, excuse me. So we can't put anything, we can't vote on anything that hasn't already been noticed. So do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, so it's with the clerk, and I will share it with everybody. Like, it's going to be public as soon as it gets published on the city's website. And we'll
You're
share
talking about what you just submitted today.
Exactly, which we highlighted here.
Right.
Yeah, and that's absolutely, people can dig into all of that language. It's actually not very long, but you'll see exactly what it is.
Folks, excuse me, I'm sorry. You can wait in line. You can wait in line to ask a question. I understand, but I'm sorry. This is a really
It will be
big group
published,
of
and I'll send the
space.
link, absolutely. Everyone deserves to see it.
Excuse
Everyone.
me. No, please. No, I'm really sorry. Excuse me. Excuse me, I'm sorry. You need to wait. Don't
Can I ask
say
my
shut up
question
to
yet?
her, though. That's not nice, people. Come on. So, folks, excuse me. I was actually defending you because someone said shut up, and I said that wasn't very nice. So I was defending you, actually. But I think that, excuse me, you know what? We said we were going to get people's questions. So let's go back to this person who has a question.
Hi there.
Go ahead.
Hi there. Thank you for this opportunity. I have 2 questions. The first one is concerns the micromanagement of our decks. I'm actually kind of concerned when you say a plant on your deck can't be more than 18 inches. Is somebody going to come every 6 months and see if it's 19 inches? I'm serious. I know it's funny, but it's kind of creepy to think of that level of micro enforcement. And thank you. And then my other question is, I mean it as a true question, is can some of that $1 million fund, or maybe we've got references to a $1 billion fund that we can get more money from, be used for more direct control of large fires, of small fires, to make sure they don't become large fires? So I've seen proposals for like a 24/7 watch during fire season, such, for example, a tower, and I think we have AI and possibilities of technology.
Your time is up. Thank you.
And so
I
that is
appreciate
the
it.
question.
Thanks so much.
So to the second question around watch, the Alert California network of cameras, of which we have several on the hilltops here, funded by PG&E and CAL FIRE since 2019, there's an AI component that monitors those 24 hours a day. Generally speaking, they actually work better at night because the reflective light of the fire is shown on the smoke, and we have near instantaneous detection. There is pending, unblinking eye, low Earth orbit, satellites with FireSat. The first one was launched in April. The constellation will be up and fully operating in 2028, and we'll have immediate detection. But there are very real limits to fire suppression. In fact, fire suppression is part of how we got here by disrupting the natural fire cycle and carrying forward the fuel load. The Eaton fire in Altadena is an excellent example. That is, there's no higher firefighting density in the world than the LA Basin. There are multiple Type 1 helicopters, fixed-wing assets, thousands of on-duty firefighters. And those hills are riddled with fuel breaks and other control measures. The fire started 600 meters from the community with sustained 80-mile-an-hour winds and 2 to 4% relative humidity. No amount of detection, firefighting response, anything could have stopped that fire, and it was but for the absence of mitigations and the vulnerabilities at the homes at the points of entry. Because those were not in place, fire then transitioned to an urban fire. So firefighting response we have over-indexed on, we have highly invested in, and I think we are at the absolute end run for what we can expect with regard to exclusion of fire from the landscape. And that's part of how we got the choked, overgrown natural landscape that we have throughout California today.
Okay, we're going to take one more from this side over here.
Hi, I want to thank you all for what you're doing. And my question, I don't expect you to be able to answer because it's about complex. Oh. Okay.
Yeah, just speak a little closer.
Okay,
that's better.
I don't expect you to be able to answer this question because it's about complex risk-benefit calculations. But the Goldner study says that what matters most of all is structure closeness. And he, with his modeling and averaging, says that with home hardening, you could reduce 15% of the structures damaged, and with defensible space, you could reduce 5%. But are those models, and I don't think this is an answerable question just here, actually taking into account how close Berkeley houses are? And is that, I mean, it stands to reason that those percentages, like the 5%, will be reduced. And at what point does it get reduced to so close to zero extra homes saved that it wasn't worth ripping out the beautiful landscapes that everybody has planted? And I'm not talking about the 5 foot, I'm talking about the gardens.
So that's an excellent question, and I've done quite a bit of work with Dr. Goldner and his team as he's using computational fluid dynamics to model urban fire spread following the initiation of structure-to-structure fire spread. And at that point, you are absolutely correct, and you're correctly quoting his work, that once structures are established as the primary fuel capable of carrying the fire, then structure separation distance, or SSD, is the factor that matters. And the only way, other than vertical block walls that are capable of blocking convective and radiant heat, the only way we can achieve a buffer is distance as shielding. However, our homes are built where they are, and that's not going to change under any scenario. And in fact, in LA, where those homes burned, they're being rebuilt on the same footprint, right? So that there's no scenario under which we increase the SSDs. So the question then really is all about how we delay or reduce the probability of the establishment of a structure-to-structure fire, that transition of a vegetation fire to structures, which comes about through two factors. One is the ground component of fire, as fire comes up out of Tilden and has direct flame contact with homes. And the other is from embers that land on receptive fuel beds adjacent to homes or penetrate the void spaces of the structures, and then structures begin burning. But it is not a foregone conclusion that a fire in the landscape to our east will automatically transition into a large-scale uninterrupted structure fire where those quotations and those percentages would be correct. The goal of Ember is to prevent the initiation of the fire that will spread with those percentages.
Thanks, Chief. We're going to come back to these questions. Michelle, Ruth, Isabel, do you have just a second? If either you could come forward. Isabel, come on up. Just for a moment. It's Q&A. Q&A, come on up. Come on up. I just want to highlight real quickly, there are a number of our neighbors. Ruth, come on up. Thank you, Ruth. There are a number of our neighbors who are already doing the hard work. They're not waiting for the city. They're not waiting for the state. They're leading their neighborhood groups to make... I know. I appreciate that. Thank you. I appreciate that. And you're going to... I appreciate that. I appreciate that. I appreciate that. So these people are doing great work. I just also want folks to hear from other neighbors. We'll be brief. It's a interlude, and we'll get back to questions. I'll be here as long as we can. Yeah. Anyway. Sorry for bringing... Isabel is doing some great work and showing us examples of Zone Zero in her own home. Isabel, do you want to talk really quickly? Thank you for being here, and thank you for being willing to do it.
Thank you, Grant.
Yeah.
Good evening. Good evening, everyone. Towards the end of April, my husband, Steve, and I hosted... an open house at our home. We invited all the Firewise community members to come, and we were delighted that about approximately 100 people showed up. So we were, really pleased with that. The open house had two parts. We had a self-guided tour of our property to show the home hardening that we had done, as well as the defensible space in Zone 0. And then the other part, the second part was presentations. So we started our work on our home over a year ago. It was after we received a phone call one morning from our neighbor telling us that she had lost her insurance. And that was in February 2024, and that pretty much really changed things for us. All of a sudden, we really, hopped to. We realized that we couldn't delay anymore. So anyway, we had this wonderful open house, and we had a self-guided tour, showing our Zone 0, where we, had removed our plants around the perimeter of our home, and put in, pebbles, and also removed our wooden wooden gate, and replaced it with a non-combustible gate. So in addition to this defensible space in Zone 0, we had about 20 signs around the house, around the perimeter of the house of home hardening, so people could see what we had done on our property for home hardening. The second part, the second part of our presentation of our open house was the presentations, and Brent was there, and we also had our contractor Kazoo Shearman of Shearman Builders, and then Chief Ravilla. So that was really great because there were 100 people there asking great questions. It was a wonderful educational opportunity for all, especially with Kazoo, who's got a really hands-on experience demystifying home hardening. I mean, I think for a lot of us, home hardening is this like really bizarre, vague notion. Yeah. So.
Okay, I got it.
So anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll just say, look, and there's 2 or 3 other folks who are scheduling home tours this month to show other neighbors not just where we've been, but where we could go. And I think it's great to have folks like Isabel who are sort of taking the lead and showing people what's possible. And there's a number of others if folks are interested. Ruth is also a Firewise leader. Firewise has been a big part of the grassroots kind of organization in the hills of people doing the work. And Ruth, go ahead.
Thanks. My name's Ruth, and a year ago, I looked at my neighborhood, and I was scared about fire, and now we are a certified group. There are 16 certified groups in Berkeley, and another 6 that are organizing, and we go after grants together. We got $24,000 from the UC chancellors. We got turned down by PG&E for 140, and we're now going after 1.5 from another source. And so we're looking for funds, and we're helping each other, and it's important to if we're going to do this work that we know our neighbors. And so the leaders get together quarterly. We're sharing information. We have a website. We're offering free volunteer inspections for people and really trying to be prepared. But we can't do it alone. So
thank you, Ruth.
Thank you.
Last one. One person, again, a lot of people may know Michel. He's been kind of a single kind of force of nature in terms of creating volunteer activities and clearing vegetation from neighbors who can't do it themselves. And I just wanted Michel to talk about a great project they just launched and appreciate all your work.
Thank you, Brent. I'm one of about 20 or 25 organizers from a small Firewise group called Creston Firewise that gathers approximately 110 homeowners or properties. we've been working very collectively together, as well as with other groups, Fire Breakers, which is just a little downhill of us, Park Hills, which is a little uphill of us, east of us, and all of our neighbors, 7 Firewise organizations that have worked fairly tightly together. On April 12, we put together our first event. We've only been certified since January, so we're a new organization. But we put together our first event on April 12. We had 120 volunteers, including about 70 volunteers from UC Berkeley. We cleared 250 linear yards of Grizzly Peak, extremely severe overgrowth that was actually frightening all of us. And all of that was done without any money from anyone. We self-raised, we fundraised among ourselves, and we did everything we could to keep the costs low. And we also took advantage of what the city allowed us to do, which means we used the CHIPPA program. And altogether, we were able to do something that we thought early on was impossible to do in over a year. So I know it's possible. We cleared 7 full properties, very large acreage, almost all of them with people whose homeowners could not do it themselves. So I know it's possible to do. We have 3 more events to do this year, and I know you guys can do it too. Good luck.
Thank you. Great. We'll get back to Q&A. My only point of doing this was this is exactly the kind of community know-how and just inspiration and risk-taking and willing to sort of get out there that we need to solve the problem. So thank you guys for being here, and back to Q&A.
Yes, thanks. I think we're on this side.
All right. Is this working? Yeah, I'm Tom Francis. I'm a resident of Berkeley, up in the Berkeley Hills. I just wanted to suggest a couple of things. If the ordinance is moving forward, I'd suggest you include a resolution that had some of the language, the commitments that you made, Brent. So, and I do appreciate that. I can say as a homeowner, I maybe have the financial ability to do some things that perhaps a lot of people can't. And one of the things I'd suggest the city think about is that if you really believe that it will be $3,000 to $5,000 to do this work, then make it such that if a homeowner can prove they've put in $3,000 to $5,000, that they show that to you and then have another year to put in another $3,000 to $5,000. Because I'm really worried that it could be $20,000 or $30,000. And because of that, I don't think we should ask anybody to put that in right away. Maybe over a period of 5 to 10 years.
Thank you.
I think that's a really good point. I think to Councilmember Blackaby's concept of the implementation plan that's due back in December, I think that's a really good suggestion for a good place to start. Thanks.
Yeah, and again, Brent, there's a lot of heat in the room. My partner is one of them. I wanted to mention that I do appreciate that you at least listen to some of my suggestions.
I appreciate it.
Thank you. Someone on this side?
All right, please don't cut me off. Okay, I love Berkeley and how people make houses beautiful, how they put flowers on the sidewalk. I like also rebellious nature of Berkeley people. I love them. And this is why I took professional sacrifice to come and live here in Berkeley. I don't want to see Berkeley changed. And what I'm afraid, what you are proposing or trying to shove down our throat quickly here is going to change the face of Berkeley as nothing in the history. Environmentally, aesthetically, very, very much aesthetically, and I hate to see that. I see a lot of opposition here in the public, and I would make concrete proposal to you guys who have not been heard, because they don't want you to hear somebody else pointed here, they don't know what democracy is, to stay after this meeting and we can talk and organize how to do and how to respond to them.
Thank you.
Okay.
Your time is up. Thank you.
So please stay,
Appreciate it.
please don't
Thank
cut
you.
me off, you know.
No, I'm sorry, but I'm
what
trying
I
to make
don't
sure
like
everyone
about
has-
this, it's based on
Excuse me.
fear-mongering.
Thank
And
you.
you know that
Thank you for your
fear-mongering brought
comment.
Hitler to power.
Excuse me. I'm keeping the time to a minute because I want to make sure that everyone gets the same amount of time, and I want to hear from as many people as possible. And so I'm not just cutting you off to be rude. And so I want to be respectful of everyone else's time. And the fact that we have staff here that are sitting here, not only our staff, but also city staff from the fire department. And so we want to be respectful of their time too. Thank you. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Moray. I live on Park Hills Road. I've been in this house for 16 years. I support Embers, but not without adequate funding to cover the costs. We had a great walkthrough with Colin and his colleagues in the WE program. There are probably about 8 or 10 things that I need to do to comply with the law if passed, and we estimate that to cost us probably around $5,000, if not more. And although the $1 million that you have from the state is a great start, it's not going to help us. We're not 65, we're not low income, and I don't know that many low income people in the Berkeley Hills. And so since we are the line of defense for the entire city, we're going to take one for the team. It's only fair, in addition to your thanks, to actually get some compensation for the work that we'll have to do. So if it's going to be $5,000 on average and there are 1,000 homes, you know, do the math. It's $1 million that we would like the city of Berkeley to commit to helping us defray these costs for the entire city. It's not enough just to say, you know, we're going to hopefully get the money later from the state if the state doesn't have the money. Thank you.
Thanks.
Maury, I'll just say thank you. And one of the mechanisms we have right now is this transfer tax credit, right, which is available.
Folks, please.
Yeah. And securitizing it so that we're working on a process that you can securitize and borrow against it to basically bring the money forward so that down the road when you sell it, right, anyway, we're working on the financing mechanism, but that the credit does exist and we're trying to figure out how we can get you access to it sooner so it's not when you sell the home.
Right.
We are working on it.
And keep in mind what I just mentioned earlier about some of the community organizations that we're looking to organize so that we can help to do some of that work for free, right, as volunteers. And I know that my office and I will be out there helping folks with that work ourselves. So just keep that in mind. And also one thing I want to say that we haven't mentioned yet is that we have a budget deficit in our city. And so we have to keep in mind that we're trying to do absolutely as much as we can, keeping in mind that we've got a lot of, you know, struggles right now financially. I just want to be realistic about that, but I really appreciate what you said. Thank you. Go ahead on this side.
I'd like to thank the fire department for the briefing, and then I have a question which is threefold. Is it legal, practical, and or useful for homeowners or residents to install sprinklers in their private homes?
Great question. Thank you.
And just to clarify, you're talking about external sprinklers, not interior residential sprinklers?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so no is the simple answer. So putting a sprinkler on the rooftop in high winds is just going to marginally increase the relative humidity at your neighbor's house and highly ineffective. Exterior under-eave sprinklers are effective if they are hooked up to an NFPA 13D system, a residential sprinkler system. If you don't have that, it's a tremendously expensive retrofit. It's required for new construction, but not for existing. The problem really quite simply becomes that the odds of getting the sprinkler turned on at the right moment when it'll be effective are very, very low. And now you are creating competition for a limited water source that the fire department needs at the point in time will be effective. And if we have a myriad of these things throughout the community, when we go to fight fire, there will be no water. With the exception of if it's hooked up to an FPA 13D system, there's a triggering mechanism associated with that, but they're still highly ineffective for external wildland or adjacent structure fires. They're intended to prevent an interior compartment fire from spreading beyond the compartment of ignition. So the short answer is no.
Thank you.
Thanks. Great question. Over here.
I think this would have more credibility if we knew more about the causes of fires. For example, I would like to know more about arson and the encampments that we have and what their role is in the fires. I mean, I know there's climate change, but over the last 10 years, we have had a lot more criminality, and I don't understand why we don't hear more about this. So that's number one. The second thing that concerns me with all this talk about closeness of houses is why the city is so obsessed with density and building more and more houses closer and closer together. I asked the chief, and I hope they address this in their report that's coming out. This will affect everything from fires to evacuation, and I just cannot believe how people are pushing buildings to be closer together when we know this is a problem.
Thanks for your question, or your comment. Thank you. Yeah, I know we're not really talking about arson today, so yeah, I'm gonna just say thank you and yeah.
I just want to briefly address the issue of density. It's not what we're here to talk about, but in case anyone is following the middle housing debate, which is another controversial thing that's coming, just to be clear, the middle housing proposal, which if passed will increase density, does not affect the hills. The entire hillside overlay, which is much larger than the area we're talking about, is not part of the current density proposal. So we can talk about that another time, but there's no current proposal to increase density in the hills.
And keep in mind, actually, even though we're not talking about density, that new housing is actually more fire safe and is more likely to have a lot of the things that we've been talking about that keep buildings, preventing them from buildings from burning in the first place. So, okay, go ahead.
Thank you. Excuse me. This is addressed to you, to the mayor. I think we are all a lot less concerned about process than to coming to a program that we can all stand behind and be eager to see implemented. I got a call from the Board of Fire and Forestry today, and they told me they've heard a lot about Berkeley lately. And they're a little incredulous that we know what Zone 0 is, while they say that they're still figuring it out. They are actually in an informal public comment period time, and so any Californian citizen can write to public comment at bof.ca.gov. They won't respond in an informal comment. Once they finalize the rule, there'll be a formal comment, and they'll respond to all comments. You can submit the same comment twice. So my question is, I understand you wanting to move the process forward. Can you creatively either encourage all of the council members to vote no on Ember as it exists and reintroduce it, or extend it? I don't know how city government process works.
Thank you. So, we have something called the Brown Act. So I'm limited in terms of who I can speak with about a particular item. And I would not encourage people to vote no in its current stance because I do support it. I voted for it before. It passed unanimously. And I know that Councilmember Blackaby is working on changes that I'm really interested in looking at and probably supporting because I think that those changes are important and are based on feedback that we've heard from folks. And then the other question you asked, and what was the second part?
Well, basically, will there be enough time for people to provide further feedback?
Yeah.
So once we have a chance to read it, since we haven't read it yet.
Do you want to?
Yeah. So just to clarify process, so if this ordinance as written, which doesn't include any of the changes, passes on the 17th, it won't go into effect until January 1st of 26. By which time the state will have finished their rulemaking process, and we will have come back to the council with a revised fire code that's required through the triennial update process that will include all the recommendations from the process that was outlined tonight by Councilmember Blackaby that will occur over the next 6 months. So by January 1st of 2026, we will have a revised ordinance that includes any amendments that we make over the next 6 months as a community, through that community process. Does that make sense?
I'm sorry, but you can't, there are so many people waiting to speak, so I really want to be respectful of that. This person on my right here, go ahead.
Yes, I'm Anthony Sumkin. I've lived in Park Hills. And my question to the council is, we've heard a lot about the fire coming east through Tilden. What is Tilden doing to manage or mitigate the likelihood of fire coming to our community?
Thank you. That's a great question.
Okay. So we meet with all the stakeholders, including East Bay Regional Park District, regularly. They have done a significant amount of work along Wildcat Canyon and adjacent to Berkeley. We all agree that more needs to be done. It is out of our jurisdiction, so we do not have authority, but we do have influence. Most of their work is funded by grants, and they have recently told us several weeks ago they were the recipient of another $10 million in grants, which are all going to be applied adjacent to Berkeley and Claremont Canyon. Is that correct, Colin? So that work is happening over the next year. So East Bay Regional Park District, I think, is a partner. They're at the table. They're doing the work to reduce the threat immediately adjacent to us.
We'd like it if they could come here at these future meetings and present what they're doing.
I will invite them. Thank you for that suggestion.
Yeah, thank you. I do want to make sure it's clear that we are speaking a lot to other jurisdictions to make sure that they're doing work too. We recognize this is not just like there's a bubble around Berkeley and it's only going to impact us. And so just keep in mind that there are other jurisdictions that are also really focused on this and doing work in this area.
I'll say, look, they've told us they're spending $10 million on vegetation management. Just to the gentleman's question, they're spending $10 million on vegetation management this year in the parks. And they're phase one of a two-phase project to build a fire break from Centennial all the way along Wildcat Canyon to Kensington. So they take this seriously as well, and they're investing money. We wish they would spend more faster, but they are working on it.
Thank you. Okay, over here.
Hi, my name is Janice Thomas, and I live on Panoramic Hill. I believe in defensible space. I'm a convert. I believe in ember resistance. I do not believe in ember proofing. I believe in the importance of 0 to 5 feet. I'm a very big believer in that. I am not in support of, in any shape or form, the no vegetation with roots in zone 0. It's like the earlier speaker said, incredulous. You know, there's a reason why people are resisting. And I just want to talk about, you've seen those videos, I'm sure, of the two structures, the two little houses, and one burns up right away and the other doesn't. And what do we take away from that? What's the lesson? What are we supposed to learn? I thought it was vegetation. There's some vegetation. Is that what most people took away? I think so. Anyway, I found in KCRA Sacramento a video of Dr. Ann Cope, and she in fact showed that there's wood siding on one, not on the other, wood fence on one, not the other, gravel on one. There was a lot of reasons, not just vegetation.
I'm sorry, your time's up. Thank you. Okay, so can someone speak to, yeah.
So to your point, I was on a call with Dr. Ann Cope, IBHS's lead scientist today, and to that example you cited from, they've done about 5 of those tests here. They've also done full-scale testing at Rock Island, South Carolina at their testing facility. I've been there, I've watched them instrument and burn them. In that example, the one to the right, typically, that is hardened, that is the full suite of mitigation. So it is IBHS Wildfire Prepared Home plus construction, which largely matches to Chapter 7A, exclusive of non-combustive decks, and the full suite of defensible space. And they're showing the combined benefit of all of the above. And you are correct that on the left, there is a combustible fence directly attached. There is combustible mulch up tight against the house. There are plantings about every 2 or 3 feet around the house. There's T111 siding, and there are single-paned or double-paned non-tempered vinyl windows, which tend to slide out of the casing. So there's the full suite of, and no ember-resistant vents, and vinyl gutters and downspouts. Their point is that the full suite is what it takes to get the full level of benefit, but there are some minimum thresholds, and one of those, and the one that is not regulated by the building code, is zone 0. Now with zone 0 coupled with ember-resistant vents and a Class A roof covering, that unless you are one of the 100 total homes in the Hill Zone that have a wood shake roof, you already have a Class A roof covering. Those are the big 3. And when those 3 are present, Class A roof covering, ember-resistant vents, and zone 0, the preponderance of the ember vectors are eliminated because they work as a microsystem, and there's more you could do. But the additional elements, specifically the non-combustive siding, the double-paned, one-tempered windows, that is primarily for conductive and radiant heat from an adjacent structure or vegetation burning, a structure greater than 25 feet, or vegetation that's in the area. But for ember resistance, those 3 achieve almost all of the benefits from the ember attack. Sorry, just to the point though, in the code as written today and as proposed, single specimen species are specifically exempt beyond zone 0. So an isolated planting under the current code and proposed ember is specifically exempted so long as it's properly maintained. So that's long-standing, and the standard for existing state law and Berkeley's existing law is vegetation capable of transmitting fire, readily transmitting fire. And single species, specimen species, are simply not capable of readily transmitting fire.
Yeah, I'm sorry, could you, I also don't know what you mean by
Single specimen.
Sorry, this is the problem of code language. So the code says specifically, under exemptions, single specimen species are exempt. That's a very clunky way, thank you CAL FIRE, of saying a single plant. And a single plant that's in a landscaped yard and is not part of a contiguous planting, say a row of hedges or a field of decadent brush, or something in its really wild state is the best way of putting it. So a single specimen species is and will continue to be exempt unless it is in zone 0. And in zone 0, those are simply incompatible with survival structures under Ember attack.
How far away?
I'm sorry?
How far away from
5 feet is the, I'm sorry? I see. I see. The separation between plants, it's generally between 1/3 and 1/2 the height of the plant is the separation.
And that's why we're going to have the fire department come and tell us what this actually looks like. I can understand. I think I'm on this side. Yes, go ahead.
Hello. One of the things I think is
Sorry,
really
is this my work? Yeah, should be good.
an advantage to being early is an opportunity to address our local conditions, which I don't see in the CAL FIRE measures. I'm always, in their examples, it's a ranch house and a large lot, and there's all these different zones. We've got less than 10 feet to our neighbor on 2 sides. And so we also have a slope. We talk about bringing up the tree 10 feet above us. Okay, well, that's below our neighbor. And in the slopes, what do we do there? Does that mean that on the slopes, all these trees, that we bring ours up to 10 feet above our roof, and our neighbor is then having an issue because our tree is lower than their deck? This never gets addressed. So being early, we can have I would hope that we would have some input on solutions for dense and sloped lots, and solutions like people are talking about where we can keep our moisture.
Thank
Because
you.
the other thing that scares me is eliminating.
I'm sorry. Your minute's up, so I'm going to let them address the piece about sloping. Folks, we already established why we said a minute per person.
I appreciate the question, and I think it speaks to the goal here, which is to give us enough runway to be able to have these individual conversations and individual structures. What you're describing to me sounds like something that wouldn't require removal of the tree, but we'd have to look at it together. We'd have to have the team come out and do that individual assessment, because you're absolutely right. The goal is to maintain as much canopy as possible, reduces heat, maintains moisture. Mature trees generally don't tend to contribute to the spread of fire. If there's a way to if there's a way to look at this so that it is compliant with the code, and what you're describing makes me think it would be, that's what passing this now allows us to do. It gives us that runway to start in July with the site visits, the coaching, the developing a game plan with each individual resident. So I think that's a really good point.
The neighbor or the person who owned the tree? I mean, seriously, there's all kinds of things.
Sure, yeah, and to your, again, absolutely. When we're talking about who's responsible for the vegetation, that's also very clearly outlined in the code. Everybody is responsible, or vegetation on your property, you're responsible for maintaining to protect a structure, even if that structure isn't on your property. The vegetation is on your property, you're responsible for that portion of it. There are a lot of rules. The fire code is how many thousands of pages? Many thousands of pages. So our goal is to make sure we have those individual conversations with folks.
Thank you. Okay, this mic over here.
Hi, my name is Ashok Sablak. I live on Creston Road in Berkeley. I've lived all my adult life in Berkeley. I'm a registered fire protection engineer with 50 years of experience, and I've worked on fire code, building codes, and I only want to say that this is last of the most ridiculous proposals I've seen in my whole life. And people who don't listen to me, let me give you 2 examples. Danville Fire District, Duffel versus Financial District, they passed the ordinance. I said it's wrong. They didn't listen. They went to court. They lost. most powerful agency in California, Energy Commission. I went there, told them you're doing wrong. They didn't listen. They said, you are a hired hand foreigner. What are you telling us? And guess what? They went to court and they lost. You people haven't done your EIR, and you are just telling people to put separation, which is ridiculous.
Thank you. Okay. Go ahead.
All right, so I'm a little unclear because before we had Ember going all the way down to Shattuck Avenue, granted in 5 phases, and now we're talking about the phase 1. But then we're also hearing we're just confirming the maps that we already voted on in April. So are we just doing these 2 sections, or are we doing the whole thing?
Okay.
Do you want to, maybe I'm saying it.
So there's a couple of things. There's what we must do, and there's what we can choose to do. What we must do is adopt, at a minimum, the maps the state has identified. That's in the government code. There is no flexibility about that. Within the maps identified by the state, adopted by the local agency, which is the city in this case, there is a very small sliver of very high that runs along the Upper Hill District. That has always been very high. In fact, it contracts, so that the existing requirements for defensible space and home hardening for new construction or permit required event continue to apply in those areas. And then the existing maps bring high down, way down the hill, which triggers 7A construction requirements for a permit requiring event. What Ember is proposing, so that's what we must do, is adopt the existing maps as proposed. What Ember is proposing to do is to establish an additional requirement that includes Zone 0 mitigations that will be required by the state, probably effective in January 1st, 2029, as a matter of course. We'll apply those sooner in that upper area. And that, as part of full transparency about what we believe a comprehensive solution pending future city council action in phases, subject to votes and public comment in a future process, to bring the requirement for defensible space farther down the hill to the extent to what we believe is the Ember threat zone for Ember projection. However, to be clear, that was strictly advanced to show the thought process behind it. There is, in my personal opinion, with regard to efficacy of the mitigations, the extent of mitigations for Ember resistance, the very top of the hill leaves an awful lot of the hill zone unprotected against future Ember attack, but is simply not realistic nor practical to try to roll out something this dramatic over such a large area. So intended to show a phased approach, but to be crystal clear, there's nothing about showing future recommendations that will be subject to debate, discussion, learnings, and council actions. Nothing about that that's
Right, so then I guess my simple question is, are there areas that the state has considered moderate or low fire zone that Berkeley is declaring high fire zone, which they did in the first reading, because, you know, obviously this, due to the science of the state, wind conditions, spacing of houses, other things like that, access, egress, these areas do not have high fire risk. So I do appreciate it. I mean, I'm going to be doing some hardening from what I've learned here, but being mandated as high when we're not in high is a concern that...
I'm just curious, what's the concern?
The concern is that as the state passes laws for high severity fire zone, which are applicable to houses that would be in true high severity fire zone, those of us who are in low or moderate areas have to do it as well, even because we're called high by the city of Berkeley. That's all.
Okay, go ahead.
Yes, good evening. My name is Jean-Luc Lamarand. I'm a resident of Grizzly Peak Boulevard. As we heard earlier, we were talking about an average cost of $5,000 to comply to the Ember requirements. I actually find that to be a very low and conservative estimate based on conversations I've had with neighbors and contractors. But if one takes that $5,000, rolls it out, 1,000 households, we're talking about $5 million. And then if we further roll it out, which I assume we will do, otherwise I think you have a lot of very angry people if this thing is not rolled out all the way to Shattuck, because then obviously the objectives of Ember would be seriously undermined. So assume we're rolling it out to 9,000 households. Well, that comes up to about $50 million, okay? I'd say $60 million. So that's quite a significant financial burden on the residents of Berkeley. So my question to you is, a lot of the people within Berkeley, within the hills, may not necessarily be able to pay that $5,000 or $6,000. So we're talking about 30% of the people in the Berkeley Hills will probably not be able to pay. What will you do?
You know what? I heard your
to
question.
those people who cannot pay?
I understand, and actually.
So what are you going to do?
I hear your question, and so your question.
$1 million is not going to cover people who cannot pay.
Excuse me. You know what? Individual people are not going to be spending $60 million. What you're talking about is a few thousand, and I understand, but I think we've pretty much addressed already the ways in which we're going to be helping to support this. Both addressing grants and funding. Excuse me, you're being very rude to me. I really appreciate your comment. Thank you for your comment. Thank you for your comment, but there are a lot of people who are speaking. So if you're not willing to hear my answer, then I can't really address your question. I'm going to go over here to this other mic. Thank you. Go ahead.
First of all, I want to thank you.
Folks, please.
I want to thank you all for the thought, the sweat, and the tears that you're putting into this. This is a serious issue.
Please.
And I just want to say thank you for all of your putting into this. This is a very difficult issue for all of us. My wife has cultivated this beautiful jewel in our courtyard, and we're going to lose it. You know, we're going to lose kind of the most beautiful aspects of our home. We're gardeners. We're not going to be able to garden, but we don't want our homes to burn down, right? I don't want my children to die in a fire. So what are we going to do about it? That's where I'm coming from. I'm very sympathetic to everybody's position in here, and I welcome the debate. My question is more specific. As I look at my neighborhood and my own yard, I think of Zone 1. And as a design professional, I can visualize the implications of Zone 1 aesthetically, et cetera. However, you guys aren't really talking about Zone 1. I live in the Grizzly Peak Death Zone. Could you please, in future conversations, explain more Zone 1? I hear a lot of Zone 0. Sure. It's going to be hard for us. Talk about Zone 1, and then what will you do to enforce Zone 1? Thank you so much.
Zone 1, Dave, or
Yeah, it's a great question that has come up a lot, and I think you'll note there's not a whole lot in Ember about Zone 1, because quite simply, there's not a whole lot required. A dead tree, big dead juniper thing that is no longer healthy and maintained, not a good idea, shouldn't be there, but I don't think that's a surprise or necessarily a gardening concern. The biggest challenge in Zone 1 is contiguous hedges that usually used as a screen. And because they're used as a screen, typically that means the homes are very close together, and that's the worst possible place for them to be. But many of those are actually in Zone 0. And so what we just want to look at, leaving the continuous tree canopy alone, because that is an entirely different topic that isn't particularly relevant and is specifically allowed for that to be maintained. It's whether or not the combination of ground fuels have continuity to the aerial component, the canopy, and whether they have continuity that is capable of readily transmitting fire to the home. There are endless ways that Zone 1, and for that matter Zone 2, can be maintained in a nice aesthetic, whatever the choice may be, and not capable of transmitting fire, to include plant choices, irrigation, separation, and maintenance. And the code is not prescriptive there because it shouldn't be. And this is not the foothills examples that we always see, where there's really quite a bit you can do in that space, and there's very few hard and fast requirements. As I said several times, the standard is vegetation capable of readily transmitting fire.
Okay.
So for trees, which are in Zone 1 and Zone 2, the standard by the state is 10 feet canopy separation distance. Now, I'll be the first to say that's not particularly relevant in our setting because there is no history of independent running crown fires in an oak savanna or bay laurel mix, which is the fuel model that dominates this area. If we had conifer or extended eucalyptus stands, that's a different animal. But 10 feet isn't going to do much at that point. So there is a allowance in the CAL FIRE Defensible Space Guidelines published in 2006 for using the continuous canopy method, whereby you can have intact tree canopy that is continuous as long as you have eliminated the ladder fuels, so creating vertical separation. And then for horizontal separation, you want 1/3 to 1/2 the height of the plant horizontally, and 2 to 3x the height of the plant vertically because heat rises. Does that answer your question?
May I?
I think it's also important to point out that Zone 1 and Zone 2 are existing in the current code, as is Zone 0 under a modified language. So when we talk about Zone 1 and 2, they're already being enforced. There are some more prescriptive changes in the language to make it clearer so that there's less discretion between properties when you're dealing with individual inspectors. But that language is, for the most part, existing.
Were you going to say something, Councilmember?
I was going to say that, but maybe I'll say it one more time because I want to be absolutely clear. The proposal we're discussing, the Ember proposal, only addresses Zone 1. Zone 0. Absolutely clear, got it? Sorry about that. Yeah, absolutely. We're only addressing Zone 1, and it's fine to get... I'm going home. Sorry. Yeah.
Zone
Do you guys
0,
know what I
we're
mean?
addressing Zone 0.
We're only addressing Zone 0.
Yes.
And it's fine to get questions answered about Zone 1 and Zone 2. We have some expertise here, but I don't want anyone to get confused about that.
So, and hopefully that addresses a question that I spoke about with folks in the front that were concerned about further out areas. So 1 and 2 already exist in the code. That's not something that's new. Okay, go ahead.
I'd like to say, well, sort of repeat what someone else has said, that I don't believe, you haven't proven to me that making Zone 0 bare has the efficacy you're looking for. You know, if we have a fire in the hills and it's 40 or 50 mile an hour winds, it's going to be among the houses almost, you know, in a few minutes, and then it'll be structure burning. I can't believe the delay that you're talking about will be very much help. And then the other thing is, we're losing an awful lot when we take out plants. Plants are not just to look at. Plants provide cooling. They, you know, our houses will be a lot hotter if there's no plants around them. And they also provide habitat. They're like a great counter to what climate change is doing. And asking us to remove all plants when they're doing all these other things is, I think, ridiculous. Until you can prove that it's the plants that are the problem.
Your time is up. Thank you.
So I think the question is, what is the standard? There is very few things that are definitive. There is a great deal of research, and there's been a great deal of testing in the laboratory, both by NIST and IBHS, that have landed on 5 feet as the number that matters. They burned cribs with sensors at 1, 3, 5, and 7 feet, and 5 feet was the point at which the flux produced by the cribs fell below the threshold of certainty of igniting the structure. So we rely on the science field testing and then the post-fire reconstruction work done primarily by NIST, but also by IBHS, as they have looked at many communities that have burned, and they've tried to pull out the factors that are common to all on home ignition. There can always be more work done. There will be opportunities for that science to be refined and for us to learn more. But the existing research and testing, to me, is clear enough that Zone 0 is understood. It was clear enough in 2020 for the legislator to pass AB 3074, requiring the establishment of Zone 0. With regard to the second point, I agree with you on all of the benefits that plants provide, and there are many of them. This is a question of compromise, and the compromise is we have built homes in this environment that is fire dependent, and we need to find the appropriate compromise that allows those homes to be able to survive contact with fire. And Zone 0, specifically with the contribution it makes for reducing the speed with which Ember attack will convert to structure ignition, particularly when in conjunction with Ember-resistant vents and a Class A roof covering, that science is very clear, that it significantly slows the rate at which homes ignite. And at the end of the day here, the entire survivability of our community in the face of a wildfire is a question of speed, and is relative speed, about whether the fire is outpacing the speed of the firefighting response, which there are an awful lot of firefighters in the Bay Area, but there's a lot of challenges with getting them to the right place and time. And every minute that a home ignition is delayed, that delays the runaway chain of structure-to-structure conflagration that quickly becomes unstoppable, and as it did in 1923, will burn until about 20 minutes after 4 when the wind stopped. And so at the end of the day, yes, there could be more research, and yes, we will know more 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now, But the question is, do we know enough to start? And IBHS, NIST, the state, and certainly I believe that we do.
Only thing I would add is that if you have trouble keeping up with Chief Winnacker, which I still do 3 years in, berkeleyfiresafe.org, there's an Ember FAQ, and the first post in there is basically a summary of the 10 biggest articles that contribute to the science behind Zone Zero.
Thank you. Go over here.
Hi, thanks for your time. I just want to say, I think that the transfer tax is, a lot of these people in Berkeley, I don't believe, are looking to sell their homes anytime soon, so I don't think they're ever going to feel the benefits of transfer tax. I would really, one reason I do support like something at the state level is trying to push for a dollar for dollar tax credit for people who are going to spend well over $5,000 on these improvements to their home. So I'll just say that, and I would ask you guys to push for those kinds of credits. Number two, that was a statement. Question to maybe the fire department guys is, when I read the documentation that came from the city, there was something called the Grizzly Peak Project. And what it sounded like was that hedges within 10 feet of the road, and I don't believe it was just on Grizzly Peak, but those hedges would need to come down. So could we get some, because there are a lot of hedges in the Berkeley Hills, and they are part of the landscape. Can we get some clarity on what the Grizzly Peak Project is, how it applies to Ember, et cetera, and so forth? Thanks.
Great question. So Grizzly Peak Project is a separate CAL FIRE grant that is shared between us, UC Berkeley, East Bay Regional Parks, sort of all of the jurisdictions that are along the Grizzly Peak corridor. Our portion of that involves using grant funds to remove hazardous vegetation on the public right-of-way. So the public right-of-way, for instance, on Grizzly Peak Boulevard, Grizzly Peak's about 50 feet wide, but the public right-of-way is 76 feet. So on either side, one side there's a sidewalk, the other side there's telephone poles. That's all technically public right-of-way and is subject to mitigation by the department. A separate fire code law states that any hazard within 10 feet of a roadway, regardless of what property it's on, the fire department has the right to mitigate that if it poses a risk to evacuation.
Will you be doing that?
So we, as a part of the Grizzly Peak Project, we have gone door to door and volunteered to do the work now with residents because we're already coming through the neighborhood. Going forward, we need a more robust plan if we're going to be stepping up onto people's private property to remove that. Our goal is to remove hazardous vegetation when it's within 10 feet of a roadway, but we're not necessarily going all the way through with that this year. We're just taking advantage where we can with state funds.
Okay.
The fire code says you can do that within 10 feet of any roadway in the city, although we're talking about the Grizzly Peak Project, which is specifically the evacuation routes throughout the Berkeley Hills.
I would just ask to follow up, any more information people can get on this, if it's mandatory,
Sure.
how that's implemented and things like that. I know
you.
people would appreciate that.
Can I say on the tax, thank you for coming in and speaking with me, by the way. I appreciate the chance to meet and hear from you directly. On the income tax credit, Adam Schiff and Republican Senator from Montana have jointly offered a federal bill for home hardening and disaster preparedness federally. We as a council have supported, there's a state bill that's working its way through the process that would offer state tax credits for home hardening. There's actually one in the House and there's one in the Senate. We passed a resolution of support, sent it to our members and to the heads of that committee saying we want it. We had dinner with the President Pro Tem of the Senate and advocated directly for those sorts of tax credits. So I totally agree with you. On the transfer tax, I agree. I was sort of skeptical at the beginning, but as we've been digging into it, it's not that you're waiting for the transfer tax 30 years from now. It's trying to figure out, can we securitize that, use that as collateral and loan against it so you can get access to the money right now. So I'm not suggesting, because I agree with you, like that would be no incentive for me to think, hey, maybe I'm gonna sell my house in 20 years and maybe I'll have money in 20, like that, I agree with you. That's not an incentive. But if we can use that as a trigger for like a PACE type loan or some other kind of mechanism to loan against it and get you money right now, collateralize that, because you know you're gonna get it, but get you the money now. So anyway, we obviously haven't figured it out, but that's what we're working towards, is to use that as something we can bring forward. And then that wouldn't be income limited, it wouldn't be age limited, that's something we'd all get.
And one more piece on Grizzly Peak. if you live on Grizzly Peak, you should have gotten a door hanger from us already. If you haven't and you are interested in having vegetation removed in your front yard, Berkeley, you can email us at wildfire@berkeleyca.gov. And then any future work where we're actually stepping foot onto private property to remove a hazard to the public right away, you're going to get a lot of notice. It's going to be a large email campaign knocking on doors. It will not be a surprise.
Yes, thank you. Appreciate that. Okay, over here.
Hi there. My background is in construction and also the national NFPA. One of the biggest things is here in the U.S., they're kind of closed-minded and they lag behind other countries because other countries have already done the research on how to prevent fires. Like in Australia, they use water fog nets to cover grasses. In Japan, they use neighborhood suppression iron domes to cover the whole neighborhood, and that's a lot cheaper than sending a truck or a battalion of fire trucks to go over there. And so for me, it's like, you talk about the code, like, I'm fascinated with the code because, I talk about mechanical, electrical, and fire safety. And one of the things is that here in the US and California and Berkeley are lagging behind codes that other countries are way ahead now. That's it, thanks.
Thank you. That's interesting, very exciting. I'd love to have a giant dome that we could implement. Go ahead, Katie.
I too thank everybody for coming tonight and expressing yourselves. We're all on this together. And I'm interested in that fence that would protect between two houses, that would protect one from catching fire from the other. But that Professor Gollner said that home hardening reduces risk by 15% and defensible space by only 5%. So I'm glad to hear that you're being flexible and thinking of incentives, so tax credits, great, but also maybe incentivize people to do the home hardening, which you can't require because it's so horribly expensive, but to replace their wood shingle kindling with hardy board, for example, or stucco, and other expensive things, in return for letting them keep some of their very treasured, that tree fern that's been there for 30 years.
Your time is up, but I hear what you're saying, the trade-off, so.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point about incentivizing folks because you can't retroactively enforce the building code. The only way we're going to get folks to participate is if we take the financial burden out for doing some of that work. So especially if you're going to be voluntarily undergoing a remodel or you're close to it, if we can help inspire some of that work, I think that's a great idea. And we've got our hands in I don't know how many different pots right now trying to find opportunities to build that incentive. And Chief, I don't know if you can speak to.
And just one other thing, that the city is providing vent mesh and gutter guards via the website today, so that incentive program is up and running, low cost, high impact. To the point about Dr. Gollner's work, though, once again, he was looking at the efficacy of those measures once urban conflagration was established, not at the initiation. So two fundamentally different components of fire, and we spoke to him after these concerns were raised to confirm. I'm on a panel with him tomorrow. We go back and forth quite a bit. But to be clear, those low efficacy rates are after adjacent homes are burning. And if the structure separation distances are close and one home's burning, it will ignite others. Now, there is an exception to that if there is a concrete block wall that is capable of stopping radiant and convective heat, not a fence. It's something that can absorb all that heat and not transmit it. I spoke to NIST about this. Metal fences actually transmit quite a bit of heat, like an infrared grill. Right? So it's a block wall would be what would be required. But just once again, to make this point as clear as I can, the efficacy rates are for structure to structure spread, not for Ember attack. And so our question really is, how do we prevent that massive structures from igniting that will create an urban conflagration that exceeds the firefighting response? Jack Cohn called it stage 5 in the Jack Cohn disaster sequence, where firefighting resources are overwhelmed and become ineffective, because there's simply more fire than firefighters, and at times, more fire than there is municipal water supply available. So our whole thing is keeping the number of structures that have ignited from Ember attack and from direct flame ground component fire coming across Wildcat Canyon, keeping that number low enough and delay the ignition long enough that we can aggregate the effective regional firefighting response.
Thanks. Over here.
Yeah. My question is for the mayor. Why rush to vote on June 17th on a language of the code that it's not perfect? Why not wait for the language adjustments that will make the Ember proposal less legally liable? Currently, it has too many loopholes, and you are facing several court suits if you vote on it on June 17th. I don't see the reason for that, and I want you to explain. The other thing I want to say that if you need help rewriting the code, there are enough constituents here that I can help you get in touch and write a proper code. I work at the Lawrence Berkeley National Lab. We have been doing fire mitigation for 15 years. I know a lot about it. The other thing for people, one of the, an answer to the gentleman who spoke about other countries, United States also tries to implement these measures. However,
Your time is up.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Not our municipality.
I appreciate
LBL and UC.
So to answer your question, I'm not rushing to do it. I mean, I think that what we have, we've worked on it. We've had a lot of conversations with folks. We've gotten a lot of feedback. We've made some changes. And, you know, of course, nothing is ever perfect, but I feel comfortable about where we're at with the current, what the current item is. And I think that that's important because a reminder, folks, that we're having this conversation because we're trying to prevent people's homes from burning. We're trying to prevent fires from being spread. So you can disagree about, you know, these, I'm sorry, excuse me. I'm so sorry, but you know what? You had your time to speak and we're trying to move on. You know, so folks, we've got, excuse me. You know what? It's true. There are many people here. There are many people who are here who are unhappy, and I will also tell you that I have heard from many people who are very supportive, and they didn't feel they needed to come today because they felt that their questions were answered. So I want to say, you can disagree. That's okay. That's okay. You can disagree with that. That's all right. Yeah.
I also want to address, as the fire chief responsible for implementing this, why pass this now? One is, again, it doesn't go into effect until January 1st. By that time, we'll have gone through another code revision to make the minor changes that we've been talking about tonight. Important changes, but minor changes. What passing this on June 17th allows us to do is to consolidate our efforts from currently trying to apply a code that is proven to have zero impact on risk reduction, that we're currently spending a lot of time and money trying to enforce across 9,000 homes in the hills. We know that it's not reducing risk, and we want to be more proactive and follow the science and best practice. And we want to apply the resources we have to a much smaller area of the hills that we know is the most critical, and I don't see a reason to wait. We passed this on the 17th. That gives us the mandate we need to make that pivot, contract, and focus our efforts on supporting all of you until this goes into effect. And if you don't want to answer our knock when we knock on your door to help, that's fine, because it's not required until next year. But we want to have the mandate to be able to pivot now and start to work with people that are willing to begin this work. And we know that substantially it's not going to change. The regulation is, the science is really clear. We're going to make some pivots based on community discussion, but the science is clear about what's required in Zone 0 to reduce the risk of ignition. So that's our professional opinion of why we would like the mandate from the council to move forward. I have sat through too many of these fires in the western United States to know that we have something that we can do that we are not doing. I cannot professionally move forward and be the fire chief without making this recommendation to City Council, because I believe wholeheartedly, as the fire chief, as a resident, that this is the right thing to do. So that is, from my perspective, why it's important to pass this on the 17th. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Okay, so there are three people, and after that, I think we just need to end. And I'm happy to stay and answer more questions, but I think I don't want to hold everyone hostage, so go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you for hosting this event tonight. My name's Catherine, and I live on the west side of Grizzly Peak and the highest risk fire area. And my question is, would you be able to clarify what will be required for a wooden retaining wall that's immediately adjacent to our home? It's not a fence, it's a retaining wall. So it would be prohibitively expensive to completely rebuild it.
It's like a 6x6, 4x4 type retaining wall.
Is there something that can be done to harden that 5 feet of retaining wall instead of rebuilding?
And just confirming, the retaining wall physically touches the structure?
Correct.
Okay, so first of all, dimensional lumber, if it physically touches the structure, bear with me here. Technically, it's an appurtenance, which means it's part of the structure. Appurtenances to the structure, the zone 0 is cleared around the appurtenance.
Oh.
And dimensional lumber is an approved decking material for WUI applications.
Oh, okay. Thank you, that's helpful.
Yes, ma'am.
It's still probably a fire hazard, but thank you.
Thank you. Okay, go ahead.
My name is Jeff Mertens, and our neighborhood in Park Hill successfully undergrounded our utilities, and we were working with the East Bay Regional Parks District. They need to underground the utilities between Tilden Park Golf Course and the Botanic Garden. It's very important. It caused one fire the same time as the Tubbs fire. The other thing I'd like to see is I'd like to see young people be hired to remove all the dead and debris underneath the trees in the park, because I think the park is the main conveyor of fire towards our neighborhood. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I think that's a great comment, and I also want to point out, I was over at Tilden a couple weeks ago. They're engaged with the California Conservation Corps, so they do have some of those young folks working on it. I'm hoping they expand that over time, so I think that's a great point.
And just generally on the power lines, Councilmember Wingraff is gone, but she was a huge champion of this, as everyone in this room probably knows. We all would love that to happen as well, but I also feel like it's so expensive, it's out of our control. The CPUC has put up roadblocks to that happening. We advocate for it, it's part of a long-term strategy, but I don't see the reason to wait for that to happen, for us to take action.
Right, I see that as a yes and. We need to do that, and also this. Okay, go ahead on this side.
Hi, my name is Noah Sodarski. I'm pretty confident that the council is going to pass this, as well as the extension of the zone down to Shattuck, which is, I think, what everybody was curious about. Thank you for your work. I really do appreciate what the firefighters have done. I was a rescue recovery worker during and after, in the immediate aftermath of Ground Zero, and I saw what an inferno looks like up close. And I worked under the fire department, the FDNY, and Chief John Pritchard. So what I want to ask you, the council, our representative, and I do live in the hills, in an area that would be affected, I think, by the extension of the extremely high hazard zone, is what are we fighting for? I mean, if you walk through the hills, the entire beauty of the hills is really dependent on the vegetation that you see. A wisteria on a stucco wall is not going to make the house burn down. So having these cut and dry solutions, including removing a hydrangea, I find what are we fighting for? What is it that we want to defend?
Okay. Thank you for your service, by the way, Ground Zero. Thank you. Thank you for your comment. Go ahead.
Hello, my name is Vanessa Moraga. My question is, given the impending budget deficit, or the current budget deficit of the City of Berkeley, what additional financial resources and support are you giving to the fire department in terms of hiring of additional firefighters, more trucks, more just resources to fight the fires? And secondly, I'd also like to know what the city's concrete plans are to deal with vegetation in the parks. Many of the parks in the hills are adjacent to houses, immediately adjacent to houses. And I see from my observation of park across the street, there's lots of dry weeds, lots of leaf litter, and there are gullies filled with vegetation. And is the city addressing them? The parks are not fully maintained or properly maintained anymore, and so you're putting the onus on the homeowners, but the city needs to address the parks as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'd be curious to know if there's a particular park that you have in mind, if there's a park that you'd like to let us know about. We're happy to let our Parks Department know, and we can have staff follow up with you. And then I'll let, yeah.
Was there a particular park?
Well, I'm just thinking of the park across the street from me, Dorothy Bolt, which is part of a gully.
John Hinkle?
And essentially, you have a lot
Dorothy
of vegetation, and there's a once-a-year sweep through where they cut down the grasses and things, but it's not sufficient. And it's just observations, like if I think of the fire load or the vegetation load in parks like Cordonices Park. I know there's been some mitigation attempts in John Hinkle Park, but I think it's just something that should also be incumbent on the city to properly maintain the parks, which is much part of the landscape as the gardens and the houses are.
You're absolutely right. I think the city's got a responsibility as a neighbor to make sure that, just as we mentioned before, that if, you are responsible for your neighbor's structure, that's absolutely true of the city as well, that they have a responsibility to meet those same Zone 0, Zone 1, and Zone 2 requirements for your structure. Dorothy Bolt Park is on the list for regular clearing. They're about 6 or 7 parks away from it. They do have a habit of allowing for the grass to grow before they cut it, because it doesn't make sense to cut green grass because it'll just grow back. So they come through, do it once a year. I would say give them a chance to do that. And if if anyone here finds that work is substandard and still poses a threat, please email us, wildfire@berkeleyca.gov. We meet every other week with parks, and it's a fairly robust process for making sure they come back and revisit it.
Thank you, and thank you to the fire department. I must say I very much appreciate the information that you've shared with us.
Thank you. I'd like to address the budget question. So we know that about 5 years ago, we started looking at all of our deployment, staffing, what's the risk of the community, and we've done a substantial amount of work to analyze that, understand it, and we are substantially through the deployment of redeployment of resources, so increasing staffing in key areas where the standards of coverage study said that we needed to increase staffing. We are remodeling stations in the hills to be able to accommodate additional personnel during high fire danger days. So there's been a lot of work that's already been done on exactly what you're talking about, is giving us more resources. Some of these resources are extremely expensive. So we were just the recipient of a $8 million FEMA grant this last year, and that's allowing us to increase staffing on three firehouses, and that's 3 years of funding for that. So there has been a lot of work that we've done and a lot of support from the council, and we are trying to leverage the money we have to go after external funding to make sure the fire department is staffed appropriately. I appreciate your question.
Yeah, thank you. The fire department does a lot of work to apply for their own grants and really make that work. So thanks, Chief. Go ahead over here.
Thank you for organizing the event. I very much appreciate it. Sorry, yeah. So I won't repeat a lot of points that have been made. I did want to address one question that Brent Blackaby brought up, the idea of how important it is to rush into this, get ahead of the game in terms of financing from the state. I actually think you could turn that argument on its head. I mean, if we get ahead of the state, we spend all this large amount of money on this mitigation, the state isn't going to give it us retroactively. So I think there's a real danger in jumping ahead of things, and we should move at the same pace as the state, for financial reasons as well as others.
Thank you. Do you want to?
Yeah, I guess, yeah, I appreciate that feedback. And I guess there's a fine line between moving ahead while at the same time they're in the process of allocating $1 billion in wildfire mitigation grant money over the next 12 months. And so I think it's getting that timing right. I will say, like I said, we've had look, we have $1 million CAL FIRE grant. Do we have a $5 million CAL FIRE grant? Not yet. We've had very fruitful conversations with very senior folks who are working through the budget process right now. I'm optimistic. That doesn't answer the question right now, but I don't think we're moving ahead of the resources. If there's one thing that the state is investing money in this budget cycle, it's this problem. So anyway, but I hear you. Like there is a risk of going too fast, but I in this case, respectfully, I don't think we are, and there is money there, and we are working to access it.
Right, and so just to highlight, I don't know where the person, sorry, there you are. Just to highlight what you were just saying, that they're working on the funding right now, and they will be requiring Zone 0 later, so keep in mind one is happening before the other. So we are addressing what we think we're gonna also have resources for. Yes.
Hi.
Okay.
I'm Cheryl. I am the president of Diable Fire Safe Council, and I support Ember proposal. I'm a home hardening specialist in the East Bay area. I've talked to a lot of homeowners, and I just wanted to thank Chief Sprague and his team. They've worked tirelessly on this proposal, and you've done a knockout job tonight. It's been great, and also City Council and Mayor Ishii. Just wanted to touch on the importance of keeping embers out of your home. They will find the weakest link to your home, and Zone 0 is one of the things we can take control of to prevent these embers from entering our home. The vegetation is part of it. What it's doing is carrying fire and heat to your home, and it will find those vulnerabilities. As Chief Winnacker said about the ember-resistant vents, it is a two-pronged thing. It's defensible space, it's home hardening. And you have the option to take care of so many of these things right now. You don't need to wait for whatever this thing is that you're worried about. It is going to come eventually, but you have years.
Thanks.
And so
Your
start
time is
now,
up. Thank
and
you.
it's a voluntary.
I appreciate you being here, and thank you very much for your support. Thanks. I know you were an extra person, but I'm gonna let you go because you're one last person left.
Thank you so much.
Okay, go ahead.
I thought someone would bring it up. So I know that we're not legally required to get an EIR. I really would like to see one, or for it to be a factor in this process. And I was imagining that when the state passes whatever they do, that they will include some kind of environmental impact consideration, which would be one reason I would think might be worth waiting if we're not doing one. I realize that private property, it's like really hard, but anyway.
Sure.
So
An EIR, got it.
Yes.
Thank you.
Sorry, one more part. Just in the letter of recommendation, the rationale, I thought I read something from Chief Sprague about that we actually have. There was a study that said there might be limited effectiveness in vegetation removal, and it's not squaring up with what we're talking about. So,
sure. Thank you.
Yeah.
So in reverse order, in 2014, Alexandra Safard wrote a paper that's been cited by a number of folks maybe in this room, and from Los Angeles in correspondence to the Board of Forestry. And in that 2014 study, Dr. Safard said, the efficacy of defensible space requires further study, which has been drawn to say Zone 0 is ineffective. So we spoke to her. I've worked with her quite a bit, and she said two things definitively. One, in 2014, Zone 0 didn't exist, so she didn't consider it. Two, in 2006, the state expanded the defensible space requirements that at that time went to 2003, as they had since to 30 feet, as they had since 1967, was established by statutes. And in 2006, they extended defensible space to 100 feet. And what she was referring to is that the efficacy of Zone 2 mitigation requires further study because they found a number of homes that burned even though they had distant defensible space. And she said that was because they had a lot of vegetation next to the structure because Zone 0 didn't exist at that time. So she was very clear that in that work, which she was referring to was distant defensible space, that essentially doesn't apply in the preponderance of structures and parcels in Berkeley because most of them don't have a Zone 2. Right? So thing one. Okay. Thing two, with regard to EIR, certainly respect your opinion that an EIR would be useful. EIRs are not something, they're a massive undertaking. Yeah. And under existing categorical exemption 4, work carried out within 30 feet of a structure extendable to 100 feet with a notice of exception, which has been filed by the City of Berkeley, is categorically exempt from Zone 0, right. And that is the same categorical exemption that the Board of Forestry and the state will use when Zone 0 is adopted as required by AB 3074.
Okay, well then just to add up, or just to follow up, I'm really concerned about habitat loss. I really am.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I know we said we were gonna take 3 on each side, and we've already gone over that.
I have
We're
a really quick
I'm
question.
happy to answer it, so we'll stay and we'll chat with you, but I think we need to close out the program, because
Yeah, I think other people
we've
would-
gone almost an hour over what we said
Yeah,
we were
I
going
think
to.
other people would gain from what I'm asking.
Sure, and you know what, and if, we haven't included it in the information and FAQs, we'll make sure we include that information as well. So I just want to thank everyone so much for coming, for speaking, for sharing your perspectives. Thank you.
And I want to thank Amy, Andrea, and our teams, Hannah and Lori, for all of their work at setting this up. Thank you, and all of the staff of it.
Yeah,
thank you to the fire department. Thanks to
Exactly.
colleagues. And thank you to all of you for coming.
Thank you, and thank you to Councilmember Blackaby and his office for organizing this, and to all the council members that were here. Thank you.
Yeah.